Mrs. Sugars, could you please take the roll call?
Mrs. Stratton,
Here.
Mrs. Fleischer,
Here.
Mrs. Gallagher,
Here.
Mr. Greenbaum.
Here.
Mr. Mayor,
Here.
Dr. Rude,
Here.
Mrs. Tong.
Here.
Mrs. Winters,
Here.
Ms. Stern.
Here. Okay, and looks like tonight we do not have any presentations. We do not have any administrative reports either. So we're going to whiz through this tonight, we hope. But we do have correspondence. So would anybody like to share any correspondence? Mrs. Elmer Stratton.
I'll just share that as our rep for the Camden County Education Commission, I always get that wrong. Educational Service Commission. We had our April meeting, and I did share some notes with everyone that will go out to everybody this week. But just the one thing I wanted to share that was a little bit different from typical meetings. They talked about a forum they had with some 8th grade students from around the county. And the interesting conversations of like, what do the students know? What do they want to know? And what they want to see in their schools. And one of the most fascinating things they said they found is that majority of the 8th graders had no idea who their superintendent was and what the superintendent did. So they were like, it was very tough because the county superintendent was there. So just wanted to share that with everybody. You'll see in the notes, nothing else real big happened at that meeting.
Thank you. All right. Any other correspondence? No? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, Mrs. Winters, I looked at you and then I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry.
Sorry, very quickly, I had the privilege of attending another one of our goals meetings on Monday with a Hispanic Latinx family with Dr. Malash. It was a really good experience. Every time I go, I learn something new, and I'm hoping to attend more of them in the future. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Any other correspondence from anybody? Okay, and I think at this time in the meeting, I'll just take a quick moment to thank Ms. Mallory and Mrs. Wethington. This is Autism Awareness Month, and we were given Acceptance Month. I'm sorry. Thank you. So we were gifted these really neat pins, and Mrs. Mallory, would you kindly tell us about them?
Oh, there we go. So a couple years ago, they added the infinity symbol for autism that represents the spectrum of neurodiversity. Basically, no limitation to how people's brains work all over the world, and it's just the infinity loop represents that flow, and the rainbow colors also represent that. So the spectrum of autism.
Thank you for sharing all that with us, and also for the gift of the pins so that we can all be part of recognizing Autism Acceptance Month. I'm stuck in the old term. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. So we've now moving on to our 9 minutes into the meeting, our first correspondence. It's the record, I think. I'm sorry. I'm obviously not fully back from the break that we took. First public comment. Thank you. So there will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for board action items only, items 17 through 20. There will be another public comment section for non-action items at the end of the meeting. If you are a student in the district, you may comment on any agenda item during the first public comment period. Please identify yourself as a student if you are, and if you're online and want to make a comment and you're a student, please put an S by your name so that we know you are a student. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the community to comment on matters relevant to the operations of Cherry Hill Public School District or within the authority of the Cherry Hill Board of Education. The board welcomes diverse opinions on relevant matters. Under established federal law governing reasonable restrictions on speech in public forums, statements which demean individual community members or groups, or which are irrelevant to the operations of the school district or are repetitious, will not be permitted. Community members who would like to present information not relevant to the school district are always welcome to communicate directly with the district superintendent, board president, and all board members via email or other alternative means. And with that, we will go to the room. If there is anybody in the room who would like to make a public comment on the action items, if you'd kindly approach the podium. Okay. And looking to see if we have any hands online. I don't see any hands raised online. So we will close public comment at this time and move on to our action agenda. So we will start our action agenda. We're doing committee of the whole this month. So we will start with our C&I committee. And if Mrs. Winters, if you would kindly lead us in the discussion items.
Sure. Thank you. The Curriculum Instruction Committee is going to be discussing the summer reading homework that we all did. The summer reading books were presented at a previous board meeting by Ms. Staffen, and she explained that the theme for the high school summer reading is Green Reads this year, which has to do with climate change. The themes, as I understand it, are selected because students and teachers have input into what would interest them. And this was a topic that they were interested in and kept coming up. So there are several books for the high school students all around the theme of Green Reads. And then there were also 2 additional middle level books that were added to substitute in for books that had been seeing less interest throughout the years. So several committee members got the opportunity to read and review. So who wants to go first and give their awesome book report on their Green Read? Dr. Rood has volunteered enthusiastically to go first and give his book report.
It's not really volunteering.
Voluntold.
I was voluntold. All right. So I read Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And this is actually a book that was adapted by Monique Grace Smith, both Indigenous Native American women. So the version that I read is a young adult adaptation. The book it's really beautiful. It's poetry. Each chapter kind of starts talking about different ways that this particular river grass, sweetgrass, is used. And then they move into other topics. They talk about maple trees and the concept of the 3 sisters, which I'd never heard before, planting corn, beans, and pumpkin all together in the same unit because they all do different things for each other as they grow. The corn provides a stalk for the beans to grow up. The beans have a tap root, which is a longer root than the corn has, so that they take water from different levels, and the pumpkin provides cover around the grass, which limits weeds and its branches. Pumpkins have kind of spiky branches for anybody that's ever felt a pumpkin, and some caterpillars don't like that. So there's this kind of incorporation of different features that make these plants work together. And it's all of these little stories that are kind of woven together with some kind of historical perspectives on Indigenous culture, which, sadly is not all pretty, but they talk about some of the trials and tribulations of people in the past, and they talk about how their stories they empower and they give voice to them in the modern day. What I really liked is that that you could take this story in so many directions. I imagine in the classroom there's hard science in here. you know, the story of the three sisters and there's mythology around why these three things are planted together. It's not because of the root systems and the, you know, and whatnot, but there's a biological like harmony that comes from the and it that it fits with kind of the mythology and the culture and all of these different things. There's hard biological concepts in there. There's concepts of economics in the stories. There's there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of there's a lot of really nice illustrations. There are a lot of thought questions that go along with the book. They're kind of just integrated in a really nice, attractive way. Really beautiful reading. Really easy reading. It the story just kind of pulls you right along. So I hopefully kids will take an interest because there's a lot of different ways to read it, I think.
Thank you. Ms. Stern.
Okay, I'll go next. So I read, voluntold, I read Paradise on Fire by Jewel Parker Rhodes, who apparently is also a best-selling author. So I'm a big nature person, so I particularly love this book because it's a story about teenagers who are from cities, and the main character, Addie, I think is how it's either Addie or Addie, it's Addy. So I don't know how, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but so she is one of these group of teenagers who she's from the Bronx, and she's part of a group of kids who are from cities who go out into a summer wilderness program in California. So I grew up in New York, and so in New York that was a very prevalent program for city kids to go out to kind of summer, you know, maybe not wilderness programs, but outside of the city. So that was kind of a familiar concept to me. And all of the kids are kids of color. They're all Black. And they go out into this wilderness program and they learn about living in the wilderness. And through that, they learn a lot about climate, and they learn things that they've never encountered or dealt with. And that's referenced throughout the book in terms of, you know, these are kids who some of them live in apartment buildings, and they're used to a lot of concrete and pavement and bricks. They're not used to is trees everywhere. There are very unfamiliar noises that they're not used to. You know, I think that it's, you know, and there's some really scary things out in the wilderness for these kids who are very used to city life, which some people who are used to not living in the city might be scared of things in the city. So it's just a really interesting perspective. And the main character has experienced a very traumatic tragedy. She lost her parents in a fire, which says pretty early on. So I'm sorry if it's a spoiler alert, but it says it on the inside cover. So don't want to ruin it for people. You know, that obviously has shaped a lot of her life. And she's, even in the beginning of the book, she's kind of on the airplane and she's making sure she knows the escape route, because that's very important to her in terms of being safe. And so in their experience throughout the summer, where there's just kind of cultural differences and, you know, whole environmental differences, there's also an experience towards the end of her time in the wilderness where something very scary happens in the wilderness, and also a threat situation, and how she kind of fights her trauma response and instead is able to kind of get out of herself and help be a leader to the other kids and get to safety. So, and I won't tell you any more about that part because I don't want to ruin the end, but it was really just well written. It was an easy read, which I appreciated because those of you who know me know that I'm a slow reader. So I appreciate a fast read, an easy read. There was a lot of about kind of building up self-esteem, because she, through exploring this and through the confidence of the adult leaders of her group, She finds parts of herself that she didn't know before. She finds strength in herself. It's a big deal for her to leave her grandmother, who is her safety net, who is raising her. So it's just a really great book. And there's references to Philadelphia because a couple of the kids are from Philadelphia and also North Jersey. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. But it was great. I think it's really interesting. The climate stuff is really fascinating, and it's all woven through the book. But there's a lot of really there's just so many layers of themes, including, I think being children who are of color in this world, in this country, who are from cities, there's so many assumptions that go on back and forth. And it's just really beautifully illustrated through relationships. There's a dog in the book too. So that's always a bonus, I think, to have, having pets and the different relationships that, and her own personal growth. It's pretty neat. So that's it.
Thank you. And I love how both you and Dr. Reed viewed the books through your own lenses. You talked about trauma response and relationships, and he talked about biology and science, which I thought was really neat, which I really appreciate, because I think a big part of summer reading is that you get out of it new things, but also what you bring to it affects the lens you see it. So the book that I read that was on the high school Green Reads theme was The Ones We're Meant to Find, which was the science fiction dystopian book, which is entirely my flavor of book for anybody who knows me. It's set in a post-apocalyptic future where the climate crisis has caused the world to fail. And there is a mystery, and there's a giant twist in the middle and an ambiguous ending. So if any of those things sound like things that you love, they're things that I love, you should definitely read the book. But one of the things I loved about it is you could tell it was written during the pandemic, because a lot of the concern in the book is about the value of real human relationships and connection versus connections we make in the virtual world, and how we experience things in the real world in real time, and how it's different when we're looking at through a lens of technology, whether it be a camera or the constant interruptions of messages constantly popping up. It's really interesting how all of those things, which felt very pervasive in 2020, 2021, 2022, come out in this book. And I'm really interested to see how the teenagers perceive it, because I definitely know for my own teenager, he felt, at first he thought it was awesome that he got all the screen time that he could get. But very quickly into the pandemic, he missed those human connections. He said to me, it's way more fun to hang out with your friends than it is to text them. And I think that's an experience that a lot of them had. So I was really excited to see that theme came out in this book. So also a climate change book, but a very different flavor than the other two. And it'll be neat to see what they pick and what they pull out of each one of these books. But I thought that was cool as a secondary theme. I also read the 2 new middle school books with my daughter, who's a 5th grader. So we buddy read them, not on purpose. She stole them from me the second I walked in the door with them and hijacked them up to her room, and I had to wrestle them back. So these are her reviews, actually. She read Hope Wins, which is a series of essays. She compared it favorably to Chicken Soup for the Soul, which she also likes. It's a series of inspirational short pieces by a bunch of different authors. A lot of it was stories that they're telling about themselves at that middle school age, the way that they felt, the way they remember how certain experiences with peers inspired them, even though they were hard at the time, to move forward and become the people they were going to be. But she really liked it. She also felt that the fact that each chapter is its own essay, but on the theme of hope, helped her to get through it. You didn't have to read it all in one shot. You could sort of take it in pieces. She liked that. And then the book that she and I both agreed was the best was When Stars Are Scattered, which is the 6th grade, one of the 6th grade collections. It's a graphic novel, which I don't have a ton of experience with myself personally as a graphic novel reader, but it's absolutely lovely. And she and I both enjoyed that it's a true story of 2 brothers who are in a refugee camp in Africa and the struggles that they faced and how they were waiting for the chance to be educated, how their education progressed, how they eventually, by the end of the book, spoiler alert, they come to America and become one of the authors here, which is Omar Muhammad, who this is really his and his brother's story. But I thought it was neat because in the beginning of the book, he's about 11, which is the age that the 6th graders are. And for them to see through a lens of somebody across the world who's different from them, but then again, not so different, because struggles with relationships and you know, not knowing where they fit in the world or what they're going to be when they grow up. And also trying to find hope in a situation that sometimes seems like there isn't any left, but hope keeps coming for them. And I thought that was really neat. There is an epilogue to the book, which everybody should read because it puts everything together. And he and his family now live in Pennsylvania, which is very close to here. So I just think there's a lot of connections sixth graders can make with this book, even though it's a child very different from maybe their lived experience right now here. It's also nice to have that connection. And I also think just in these two middle school books, I want to emphasize how happy I am that we have different formats for reading, both short essays and graphic novel. I think it makes it much more accessible to middle school kids who may be intimidated at their first or second or third summer reading assignment, having to read something alone over the summer. I think it makes it engaging and something they can jump into. And before we're done, I just want to say one more time to everybody out there listening, all of the books are available. You do not have to worry about not being able to find the books. The schools have them, the library has them. They are in audiobook form. There are lots of ways to access these books. If you're having trouble accessing the books, just ask and someone will help you find a copy so that you can read and enjoy your summer. Any other CNI members have anything to say? Ms. Elmore Stratton.
Just to clarify, Ms. Winters, so all of the books are available for our students that might have have a need to have it on audio or in a different forms, just like we have done in the past.
Yes, correct. The
Okay.
books will be available in audio as well as hard copy books through the schools and also through the public library. And also ebook format, if anybody prefers reading on a Kindle or on their iPad or however they'd like to access it, all of those things will be readily accessible.
Okay. And I'm assuming, Ms. Dr. Mahan, that these are all good for all the, these are not replacing, they're in addition to what's already, or they taking place of some of the new ones, the ones from last year, I mean.
So the only replacements that we have are in grade 8, which is resiliency. The eliminated book was Undefeated, Jim Thorpe and the Carlisle Indian School football team, and that was replaced with The Hope Wins, a collection of inspiring stories for young readers. And in 7th grade, there were no changes. And then in 6th grade, the replacement, the book that was eliminated was Hidden Talents, and it was replaced with When Stars Are Scattered. Those were the only two
Okay,
adjustments.
cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Stern?
Just to, bless you, just to mention, part of our discussion was also that this year there was no fitting graphic novel for the high school level. But instead there are shorter stories and also, I mean, this book that I read, it's not a graphic novel, but it's definitely, there are illustrations, there's kind of not as many words on a page, I guess I would say. It just, if this helps give an idea. So I thought that was important, having high schoolers who don't love to read. Myself, I had the opposite experience of Mrs. Winters. I never have my children grab a book out of my hand ever. But they, you know, I know my kids and a lot of their friends were very happy to read a graphic novel last year. And that's not an option this year, but I think, you know, there was not one that fit the theme. We had that conversation last month. So, but I think that there's other good options for kids. And I think having, other platforms like through Sora, you know, the audiobooks and other ways that makes it a little bit easier and more approachable. So that's important because we have lots of different kinds of readers.
Yeah, and I think especially for summer reading, it's nice to have something you can do in chunks. And it sounds like reading Sweetgrass, which is the one that Dr. Rood read, something that's amenable to that. You can go through the chapters. It's not like a big, long novel.
Yeah, the chapters don't necessarily like follow fully on one another. It's not a linear story. There's a lot of, so you could skip around a little bit and there's information to be had in all of them.
The other thing I want to emphasize and really commend the administration for is the fact that we have so many diverse authors and perspectives in this. The book that I read, the high school book, was an Asian American author, and the characters in the book are diverse. When Stars Are Scattered is obviously an experience of people who are from Somalia. And then Hope Wins has a collection of very diverse authors. So it's really nice to have books that draw from all different perspectives and experiences, which I think is cool. The only two books I think that we didn't have anybody read were All We Can Save and The Martian by Andy Weir, which a lot of people said was actually one of their favorites. I think Aiden said it was their favorite when Aiden was here last week. So a lot of really good choices this summer. So happy reading to everybody.
Okay, anything else for CNI besides the summer reading?
Nope, that's all we have today.
Okay. We will, thank you very much. We will move on to our Committee of the Whole discussion of business and facilities, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Couple of updates. I'll take the first one, then I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mrs. Sugars for an update on the ROD grants. You'll recall that during the course of the last meeting, when we approved our initial budget, we had the benefit of hearing from Mrs. Sugars, who gave us some good detail on what that budget would do for us and for the students in the district. And it was really all very positive. There was, however, a concern that she expressed to us with respect to the fund balance, and that that budget left the fund balance at an amount that she was, and of course she's sitting next to me. It sounds weird to talk that way about her, but she'll have an opportunity to expand on this if she wants to. She was uncomfortable with the fund balance, and there's a good reason for that, given the fact that we don't know with any certainty what state funding is going to look like in coming years. We certainly are pleased that last year's efforts, both through the community fair funding, all of our efforts together secured more than what we had anticipated in funding for this year. But that's not something that we can always count on, and we've learned that, unfortunately, over the course of the 2 decades or so before that. So there were good reasons for some concern, and frankly, in the days following that meeting, in order to be fiscally responsible and do what we thought was best for the district, which is really ultimately what our responsibility is, we met again with Dr. Malash and with Mrs. Sugars to allow them to more completely explain what that concern was and what, if anything, they might have by way of recommendations to address that. And it's a pretty simple recommendation. The recommendation is that rather than moving to instituting a 1% tax levy, if we did in fact go to 2%, which some community members have also advocated for over the course of the last few months, that would allow us to move forward with all of the projects that we have discussed and we're all looking forward to, including the expansion of half-day to full-day preschool for what I've called phase 1 of our move towards full-day preschool. And it would, at the same time, sort of right the fund balance, so that the district is in stronger fiscal shape for the upcoming year and hopefully beyond. Also respecting the fact that, you know, we're like any other, we're like a household as well. Our costs are going up just like everyone else's costs are going up. So the costs that we have to incur, whether it's for healthcare, books, supplies, construction, all of that, non-bond construction in particular, you know, those are all factors that that gave Mrs. Sugars pause with regard to the fund balance number that we would be left with at 1%. And given that concern, and also given the fact that it's always a little bit messy in putting budgets together. This year was a little more challenging because it was a more compressed schedule. The state numbers were late. We had to do a lot of work and a lot of estimating. And that's where we were left. And that's not optimal, but what is most important, at least, you know, after the meetings, is that we get to where we need to be for the future of the district, for the fiscal security of the district, and for the students. And allow us to move forward with the type of achievement goals that we have identified month after month, meeting after meeting, and that we know our students deserve. So with all of that, as a result of that meeting, their recommendation will be that we go to the full 2%, which will result in an additional $52 and some odd cents per household for the average household in Cherry Hill. The total household obligation annually will still come in under the originally estimated and published figure just for the bond, interest on the bond alone. So it's a best of both worlds with regard to the numbers, with regard to the achievement goals, with regard to the fund balance and fiscal security. A little bit, a little messy in regards to the compressed timeline and the fact that, we're going to vote in 2 weeks on our final budget. And that, so now we're going to be discussing at that time an adjustment to the initial budget, not an unusual thing, but it doesn't happen all the time. So that's the update with regard to the tax levy and the recommendation to move to 2% as opposed to 1%. Other big discussion item that I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Sugars to discuss is ROD grant, which we've talked about previously with respect to monies that are available, will be available through the state in order to improve facilities, add classrooms, preschool classrooms in particular. ROD grants will provide for 40% of the cost. The district would be responsible for the additional 60%. So it's not all free money. We still need to come up with a substantial amount. I know that Mrs. Sugars had a discussion earlier today also with Bob Garrison and has some specific numbers that she can supply. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to her to continue the discussion on the ROD grants.
We have discussed ROD grants, the availability of these ROD grants, but since we are coming down to crunch time where we will need to approve them, I thought it would be important to kind of refresh our memory and kind of walk us through the different opportunities that are available to us. There's 2 opportunities in terms of ROD grants. And again, ROD simply stands for Regular Operating District. We have 2 opportunities. One is just a regular ROD grant application. That's through the SDA. This was the first pot of money that was released. There's $350 million available. The local share cannot be funded by referendum, so they're not looking to have districts go through that process. They're looking for districts to be able to pay for their share, which is the 60% through capital reserve or through budget dollars. The deadline to file an application for this opportunity is April 30th. So we will need to approve this application at the next board meeting. And the purpose of this funding is for school facilities projects that are capital needs, health and safety, essential upgrades or repairs. They provided us with an entire list of what that looks like. At the top of the list is prioritization of a lot of things that we are already doing through the bond referendum. And so as we were looking to decide what to use this funding for, we went back to the list of things that we had cut when we were trying to get down to the borrowing capacity numbers. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The next opportunity we have is for preschool ROD grant application. There's $120 million available through the SDA. Again, the local share cannot be funded by a referendum. The deadline to file for this application is May 31st. So I anticipate that we'll be approving this application at the May 23rd board meeting. Approvable projects will be limited to those that expand current educational facility for adding preschools, classrooms, and seats, or renovations of existing facilities with limitations. So we have actually 2 applications that we're going to put in under that umbrella, and we'll talk about that next. So again, as I said, we went back to the list of items that we had cut. We had reduced funding for communication and technology in the original bond referendum. We would reinstate that funding for emergency notification systems, public address, bell systems, et cetera. We had in the original referendum set aside $6 million $6 per square foot. We reduced that to $3 per square foot. We would be looking to reinstate that $3 that we cut. We're estimating that the total application will be 5 million. And that our share of that 5 million will be just over 3 million to fund that. So that would be the regular grant application that we would put in to reinstate some of those things that we had cut during the bond referendum process. And again, total applications just over 5 million. Our local share would be just over 3 million. The state would provide the rest of the funding if they approve the application. The second is the preschool ROD grants. We would have 2 separate applications. One would be for bathroom additions. We have classrooms at Malberg that do not have bathrooms within the classroom right now. We have a waiver from the state to use those classrooms because we have a bathroom in the hallway. And so our local share of that portion would be 900,000. And then another application would be to put additional classrooms on at Malberg School. That's estimated at $6.2 million. That would give us 8 additional classrooms. And the local share for that would be $3.7 million. So we would have to come up with, as you see there, if you look at, we add up all the local shares, we'd have to come up with $7.6 million for our local share of applying for these grants. And that money would come out of our capital reserve account. We've also had some additional conversations about other buildings that we could put preschool additions onto. What building that would be, we're still discussing at this point. So just keep in mind, it's estimating $450 in construction costs for a 950 square foot classroom, plus 30% added onto that for corridors, egress, storage, bathrooms. You don't just build classrooms. Obviously, there's things that go with that. And then 25% in soft costs on top of the construction costs for the design, for the construction management, for contingencies. So if you add all that up, it comes out to about $695,000 a classroom, and our local share would be $417,000. So as we move forward with this, we just need to keep in mind that we would be looking at our local share of that process being, $417,000 to add those classrooms. And then the other things that we need to think about as we look at this is the fact that, how do these additional classrooms stress other spaces in the buildings? So obviously we're going to hire, if we, are adding additional classrooms, we're going to hire staffing for those classrooms. You'd be hiring teachers and aides for those classrooms. But you also have to think about, how does that affect the nurse's office? How does it affect custodial staffing? Will we have to look at adding additional custodial staffing, building circulation, movement within the building? What effect will that have on the principal's office? And what does that have, effect does that have in terms of the cafeteria? So to sort of circle this all back to what Mr. Mayor spoke about, if we're going to use that much money out of our capital reserve account to fund what would be considered our local share of these grant applications, I just kind of want to run down the numbers quickly so that you understand my concern and the importance that I feel in backing off of how much fund balance we're using in the budget and, using more tax levy. So if you look at our audit, Mr. Holt came a couple weeks ago and, presented our audit to us. And if you look in the audit, you'll see that we have just over $21 million in capital reserve funds in the budget, which is a very healthy capital reserve account. if you take away from that, the 4,150,000 in projects that we have slated for the 22-23 school year, that leaves you with just over 17 million. And then if you take out 4 million that we are using in the budget for 23-24 for debt service, because we're offsetting the tax impact of the bond principal and interest payments, you back 4 million off of that, we're down to 13 million. If you take off the 7.6 million that I just talked about, the 7,664,000 that we talked about, that we would need to fund these applications, you're down to 5,352,000. And then we know that in the 24-25 budget, we are allocating $4 million again to offset the debt service. So then you're down to 1.3 million in your capital reserve account within a couple of years. Now, that's not to say that we won't put funding back into the capital reserve account. That's where the fund balance comes into play. As we close out our budgets at the end of the year, we close out our revenues and our expenses. What's left over goes into our fund balance. And when we have excess funds in our fund balance, we can move those into the capital reserve account. So there will be opportunities to replenish the capital reserve account. However, if you are relying on a larger level of fund balance to balance your budget, you're going to have less funding available to put into that capital reserve account and replenish that capital reserve account. So just to sort of circle it all back so that you understand my concerns, and I appreciate your consideration of, taking a second look at that. That's why, as we are going through this process and taking advantage of these funding opportunities, we need to keep in mind that, we need to be cognizant of, I want our auditor every year to say the district's in great financial shape. And so, as we move forward, and we're looking at these opportunities and we're, not sure what state aid looks like moving forward, I appreciate the consideration of backing off the fund balance number and increasing the tax levy number just to keep us in good shape. So.
So with that, and certainly, we just heard again from our auditor, Mr. Holt, year over year, he has found this district to be in impeccable financial shape. And that's largely due to Mrs. Sugars and her staff. And this is an instance where, certainly we felt it was important to heed her advice and her concern with regard to the recommendation of moving from 1% to 2%. And thank you for providing more detail on that. So let's open this up to questions. If I can't answer them, Mr. Sugars, you're right there. I promise not to elbow you for a response. You'll just jump right on in. Mrs. Gallagher.
I have a couple of questions. So I understood your concern with the fund balance with the initial budget. My question is I've been under the impression from everybody talking about preschool that $1.8 million was most likely going to be reimbursed to us through the state.
You're talking about to expand the program.
Correct.
So we will apply for a grant to do that. And it may come back to us if that grant is approved. But at this point, because we don't have those grant funds in hand, we have to budget as though, we're footing the bill. But there may be some return at that point.
Right. So my bigger concern with moving the money from the fund balance to the tax levy is, hypothetically, we try the first year, maybe whatever, for some reason doesn't work out. You can wipe that line out from the fund balance. But if we increase taxes, I don't think the following year you're going to give us a tax, you're not going to give us back that 1% or the taxpayers that 1%. So my bigger concern is free preschool is taxpayer funded from the get-go. My second question is, with this preschool ROD grant,
for the preschools. So for two separate applications, you said, so 7.6 million. How many students will that house in the preschool?
So the 7.6 is both the regular, the telecommunications.
Oh, okay. So then just for the, what is it, 4.6?
So it would be 3,750,000 and the 900,000.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how many students would, like, how much capacity would that create for the preschool?
So the first application would not increase capacity because it would just be renovating current facilities.
Okay.
The second application would give us 8 additional classrooms at Malberg.
20 with 25 students?
No, I'm sorry. 15
15 per
students.
classroom.
15. So what's the math on that? What's 15 times?
120.
How many?
120.
Okay. So, and we need to eventually house 1,500?
I believe that's Dr. Mahan.
Yeah, no, our universe is approximately 1,700.
But the 90% would be about 15?
Yes, if you're, yeah.
Okay. So where's the rest of that coming from?
That's a very good question.
Okay. All right.
Can I just jump in here for
Yeah.
a second, Ms. Gallagher, just to clarify? So the preschool expansion aid that you're asking about is not a grant, it's a funding stream.
Right.
And it is correct that for year one, what we're talking about is changing our half-day preschool program to full-day preschool. All of those students from half-day to full-day are going to be able to be housed in the current Malberg building, plus one community provider site that we're thinking about. So this additional separate grant for preschool facilities, the preschool ROD grant for expanding the Malberg building further, is not in response to the $1.8 million you're thinking about for year one. So that is planning to use available state funding for future years of preschool expansion. Sure. I know it's a lot. Believe me, like there's a lot of different moving parts to it. And I just want to let you know that a fuller discussion of all of these things is going to be happening in the CNI committee next month in May, and then also at a preschool town hall that we're working on coming up after we have another town hall, I think at the end of April. So we sort of pushed preschool forward and we'll have better information by then, which will be nice. So when you're thinking about this year's budget, the $1.8 million, that money is to expand our current half-day preschool program to full-day preschool. Those students from half-day to full-day will be able to be housed in the current Malberg building that exists today without this addition, right? And one community provider site. This addition would be for future expansion past that point.
No, I get that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that it's not really preschool expansion isn't really a grant. You apply for it, but it's a funding stream.
I guess the other thing, and I've said to you before, is that we're now relying on a funding stream we've found very unfair for the last decade. And so my biggest concern is that, as I just said, is that from the get-go now, hypothetically, if we are not, let's say the funding stream does not 100% cover the pupil cost, then the taxpayers are footing the bill from the get-go.
That's
And-
a large assumption, though.
But it's not, because then on top of it,
Because-
we then need to find, I mean, if this is just year 2, right? Well, I guess the numbers aren't making sense to me.
I mean, part of what I would say is, you said free preschools taxpayer funded from the get-go, and that's true because we're all paying state taxes, whether we have preschool in our community or not. And the reality is that the surrounding communities around us, like Voorhees, like Mount Laurel, are already accessing this money, this state tax money, to provide preschool for their communities. Cherry Hill taxpayers are paying the money whether they're getting the benefit of preschool programs in their town or not. So nobody's sending me back a Cherry Hill refund check because we don't have preschool programs in Cherry Hill.
Right. And listen, I'm not denying the importance of preschool, but I'm just not seeing how this works financially. I mean, if we need to spend almost $5 million to house an additional 120 on top of Malberg, right? Where are we going to get how many $100 million to house the next
The structure of the
1,500?
program never anticipates that you're housing all the preschool students in district.
No, I
It's a
understand
hybrid-
that there's private providers.
Right.
But what is the percentage of private providers? So like of the 1,500, let's say, what's the quantity of private providers?
That's impossible to say right now in this district.
See, this is the problem.
But
Everything
I think
feels
the difference is
impossible to
that
discuss.
your assumptions and my assumptions, right, are different because we're both working in hypotheticals.
Right.
You can have a hypothetical situation.
I'm not dealing in hypotheticals.
You are
This-
though,
but
because your
this is-
assumptions is that,
But this is not a hypothetical.
no, but your assumption that the state funding is somehow going to be diminished or go away or not become real. That's an assumption, just like my assumption that the state funding will continue to exist.
But we're allowing Ms. Sugars to take it out of the fund balance in the event that the state doesn't fund us next year. I mean, it's not necessarily a hypothetical. I mean, it's a fear that we deal with every year,
Well,
right?
I also could also say that, you know, we would apply for this funding stream. If the funding stream goes away, our obligation to the funding stream ceases, correct? So when we're taking this in pieces, it's a 5-year ramp up, right? Then we are seeing year over year what's happening. Is the funding coming to us? I mean, that's one piece. The other piece is the community provider piece, which might mitigate some of the concerns about the buildings. We don't know. But I think in general, you know, there's a big piece in this about where we go with our programming and our thinking as a board. Right? Do we stay the safe route and we say, let's not do this? And some of us might feel that way. And others of us might feel, no, like the money's there. We are paying taxes for some districts, and there are a lot of them in New Jersey, to get preschool. Why don't our residents benefit? Why don't our kids benefit? Because we know preschool has a huge benefit on academic achievement, on learning, is an enormous financial benefit for the families who benefit from it. And currently, our preschool program that we house is a mixed program of children who have special needs and children who don't. And the children who don't have special needs and who are getting this service, they do pay a fee, but I don't know that it covers the entire cost. So there's a level of funding we're already putting in for preschool that we're not getting back. So for me, those are all pieces personally why I think this is a really unusual opportunity. And honestly, having been involved with funding for quite a few years with school districts and seeing what's happened over the years, paying a lot of attention to the public schools and how funding goes, for me, this is an unbelievable opportunity to get money for facilities that ROD grants. What did Mrs. Sugar say? I'm going to forget. It's been 8 years, 10 years since there have been ROD grants. I feel like, and this is a philosophical piece, I think, for us as board members, right? And for administration, you know, so our internet connection's not stable. Okay. We almost went out for a minute. So if that happens, we'd have to cease our meeting because it wouldn't be public. Are we good? I don't want to keep talking if we're not. Okay, thanks. So I mean, I think there's a philosophical that we all have about, you know, kind of what is the reward, what is the risk, you know, and we have to all weigh that out for ourselves. And no one can tell any of us individually how we want to proceed. For me, watching school funding and how it's gone for so long, seeing and I'm very grateful, and I'll say this publicly, I'm very grateful for your conservative approach, Mrs. Sugars. But every year I've been in the board, you've said, we're probably not going to get more funding, and you've been wrong. And I'm so happy you're wrong. I'm so happy you're wrong. And that could change, but everything could change. I mean, we could get our funding slashed again. We just don't know. What I do know is preschool has been funded in this state for over 20 years.
20 years, and over half the school districts in the state receive state funding for preschool, and we do not.
Yeah. And
we pay for it out of,
So thank you for clarifying that information, because I don't always have all the specific details, but for me, that's just a powerful thing. And I know, like, I think our taxpayers, which, you know, first and foremost, I think our students deserve to have access to as much education that is funded by all of us, that, you know, Cherry Hill students should have the same if not, should just as much access as other districts. And we don't. We didn't for a long time with kindergarten. We expanded to full day kindergarten. I mean, I just think like there's ultimately we each have to figure out our philosophical beliefs. And also the truth is this is also a risk tolerance conversation, right? We're having a risk tolerance conversation and we all might have different levels about it. And, that's just for me. I mean, there's when we look and see how preschool money has come into this state for over 20 years and has not gone away, even as other funding has been up and down, anything can change. It's always a possibility. We just have to decide like where we want to go as a board, and I mean, I think I've made it pretty clear where I stand with it, but.
Mrs. Tong.
Yeah, I just have a curiosity. Why the other school district have the full day preschool or kindergartens and we did not? I'm just curious. I'm wondering why.
Do you want me to, I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of local to us, Collingswood has full day preschool. Lindenwold, Camden, Voorhees, Mount Laurel. Where else have we visited? Vineland, a lot. Those are just some of the ones that we have visited that are local to us. Some have had preschool for over 20 years. Others are participating in the grant that we are looking to apply for.
Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
So your level of uncertainty, I totally understand. And the only thing I can add to it, to what Mrs. Winters is saying and what Dr. Mahan had shared before, is that all of this changes even if the governor changes, right? So nothing's determined, but at the same time, we have to be ready to move to a certain space where, and this is gonna sound bad. I always am the person that is gonna sound really bad too. But in a lot of stuff that we have, a lot of initiatives we have in this district are far behind the times of where we should be in terms of what we provide our young people and how much of that is pressure or financial pressure gets put out to the taxpayer. I think if you go back in the archives, there in 2020, maybe we went to 3%. Am I wrong? No, we went to 3% not too long ago. And then we were able to go back down. So that is a possibility. I could put that out. I can say I've seen that happen. So it doesn't have to stick overall, stay at that level or whatnot. But I think because our demographics of the town are changing, this is the same thing I think about when we went to full day kindergarten. We were set up with a half day because we were a town where mothers didn't work. And so it was a stay-at-home community. Now we have moved into a space where people need full day care and we have a need for it. And we are projecting and the state is projecting a greater need for it because of the amount of people that are now forced to go back to work.
I feel like I'm not denying the value.
Mhm.
I'm never denying the value. I am not understanding how we afford it. Because if we have to cover the 60% and we cannot do a bond referendum, which I don't feel like we can handle another one. We have $20 million. And if each year since, previous board presidents have said that we're going to give $4 million towards the debt services each year, that really doesn't leave us with much wiggle room. And so unless I'm missing something, I don't understand how if like $4 million covers 120 students times 10, right? Because we need to get to like 1,500 plus, of this $120 million that's open for preschool ROD grants, if there are X amount of districts already providing preschool, like how many other districts are we competing for this money? So as I said, it's never about the value. Of course, I see the value in preschool. Like if I could just wave a magic wand and it could happen, I would do it. I am just not understanding the logistics and the finances of it. That's all I'm saying.
I think if can I add in this one? I think you know, with the other districts that have been doing it, that they have relied off of the federal funds because they just have not gone away. They have maybe evolved, or state funds, yeah. They have just evolved in different terms and different names, but that's how they've been doing it. And so I think the only way you're gonna get the assurance of, are we gonna have the Peter to pay Paul situation? Is gonna be us, that's a deeper conversation with DOE. I think what Ms. Sugars is proposing is a way for us to be conservative and not be in a total loss in the red, you know, eventually. And with the 1,700 kids or whatnot, that's like 5 years to get to that, right? So it's
Correct.
not
So, I mean,
right away.
I really think, so I'll play worst case scenario. I'm not good at this. I'm usually rose colored glasses, but I'll try it on for size. Worst case scenario, we move from half day to full day preschool in the fall, which is already in the budget, and we don't get preschool expansion aid. We stop there. And we've converted now our half day program to full day, which means that in my mind, it's a more appropriate and effective program for our preschoolers as they bridge to full day kindergarten. You know, and I think that is still a benefit within itself. As for these ROD grants, in my opinion, the state does not give away money to build things. It just doesn't. It's not something that the state does. And this is an opportunity to have the state give us a chunk of money for construction, which rarely, never happens, especially for ROD districts. It did happen in the Abbott districts 20 years ago, but that was a special situation. I don't want to leave that money on the table.
But I guess my question is that if we, like, as you said, we try it, it doesn't necessarily work out. We've expanded what we have, but we've now have taken on this money from the state. I mean, there has to be some sort of like, if you stop them, you can always give money back. Is that, but is that, well, that's what I'm asking. Or if like we start construction and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess then what?
So if we decided at some point not to pursue, like we were awarded the ROD grant, we
Right.
decided not to pursue it. The way that ROD grants work is you put the money out and then you ask for reimbursement from the state. So if we didn't construct anything, we weren't asking for reimbursement, then there would be nothing to.
Mrs. Stern.
I think just related, it's not directly to this, to your point, Mrs. Galler, but related, you know, one of the things that's happened over the past several years is, you know, we had the S2 bill that passed in 2018, which said that our districts that the underfunded districts, which we were one of them up until this year, underfunded districts would, in 7 years' time, be fully funded back to the SFRA formula from 2008. So, you know, fully funded in 2008 dollars, but okay, so we'll take it. And very shortly after that, there was a huge outcry from overfunded districts. And I'm talking about districts. There was one of neighboring district that got 233% of the SFRA formula. We were getting 49%. They got 233%. I mean, it's outrageous, right? But that's what was happening. And that got slowly rectified by the passing of S2 in 2018. Fast forward, the overfunded districts got together, spoke out very loudly. Well, I think it was last year or the year before, they got $50 million. This year, they just got another $100 million to offset their overfunding loss. I mean, this is the power of speaking loudly and speaking out. And I'm very, very grateful because we have a very active, vocal, fair funding group now. And they're leading the charge in this district. And honestly, I would love to see us all continue to be as supportive of their efforts as we can be. You know, we see, I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I mean, I've been at the budget hearings. I've testified at the budget hearings for fair funding. You see what a difference it makes when you speak out, when you stand up, and the government does tend to respond. Will it always respond? I don't know. But, it's another argument for why we have to keep being active with fair funding. Thank you very much, Strategic Planning Committee. I mean, and more importantly, thank you very much, Fair Funding Committee through Zone PTA. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's a whole lot that's unpredictable. And I think that's very real, and I can appreciate that concern. Are we still? I'm pausing because our internet. Our internet is working or it's not working. It's up. Okay. Not that I would have any problem not being live streamed personally for my own, hearing my own voice, but for our public meetings, we have to be live streamed. So if we have to be live streamed, if that's our practice to be public. Okay, so it looks like we're still broadcasting, so we will keep going. But anyway, I've said more than enough about it. But I really want to acknowledge how there is a lot of there's a good amount of uncertainty. I also think that's the reality of being reliant on funding streams that are out of our control, right? Some of it is out of our control. There's a good amount that's in our control, and that's our tax levy, but the rest is out of our control. And it's just, it's definitely like, that's the challenge, I think, of being a public school district, of being a board of a public school district. We face that. So.
Mrs. Elmore Stratton.
Yeah, I had questions about the budget piece. I don't know, we're allowed to ask that too, but also I totally get your trepidation. I had the same things when I first heard it, but I think I was coming from a total different angle. But does it help knowing that we can stop it, that there's a stopgap? Does that help?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't feel like that's the avenue that anybody is choosing to take, because this is really, from my opinion only, this is very much based on feelings.
So I think y'all should have a better conversation. That's what I would suggest.
We love to have coffee together.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll keep talking. That's what board members do.
My question for the budget part. So just so I'm clear, with the 2%, going to the 2%, does that still give us, and I think my screen went off, but does that still give us the things that the teachers have been asking for? Like, is that still coming with all of those additional positions, the contractual change in health benefits? Are we getting all of that with this 2%?
So nothing would change, Mrs. Stratton, from the budget that we approved for the initial submission. It would just shift the funding sources. So nothing would change from that budget, which I should mention was approved by the county today. So we were very happy to get that information today. But it would just be a shifting of backing off of the use of the fund balance and increasing the use of tax levy.
Is there a way that we can have it really laid out and maybe for the community as well, of what going to the 2 gets them? Like, I would like to know what, I want them to be able to see what their money's going to and how it's helping and how it goes along with what we've been pushing all year, which is proficiency and giving resources to the teachers.
Yeah, we certainly talked about some of that when we did the initial submission presentation, and we can certainly talk. We have our public hearing at our next board meeting, which is on the 25th.
And that could be laid out.
Yes.
It'll be later, and it'll be posted prior to the meeting and discussed in detail at our next public hearing.
Okay.
And I think it's posted public, the initial submission.
The presentation. is,
So
yes.
all the positions that were in the initial presentation is posted on the website. So community, anyone can look at that and see all the additional positions that were discussed that night. So this extra 1% is specifically allocated to fund balance. So, and that'll be updated, and then we'll have a public hearing, right? Which will, this is a fully dedicated opportunity for the public to hear about the budget.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify or make sure that going to the two, if it doesn't get them what they need, then I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure they're getting what they need and out of our money, pretty much. So that was my question.
Mr. Greenberg.
Hi, so one thing I thought was important to clarify is we had a lot of those items on the wish list added with the preliminary budget with the 1% levy that we talked about. The concern that Mrs. Sugars brought up is that we're seeing a 29% increase of the fund balance. Can you confirm if my memory is correct? I think this additional tax levy brings us down to 5 or 6% increase. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you are correct. That's the memo that we sent home a couple weeks ago. So right now, our increase in fund balance over the 22-23 school year is 29%. This would reduce it to 5%.
Yeah, and I thought that was pretty significant. And my understanding is that's really the main driver behind going to the 2%, is that we still get everything we got with the 1% levy, but now we're not increasing the tax levy, which moving forward helps with capital reserves and
Our-
future expenses.
We are.
I'm sorry, increasing the tax levy to drive the fund balance down from a 29% increase down to only a 5% increase.
Sorry, but when we went down to 1, didn't we have to cut positions out with that? Or 1.5, like, I thought I saw that.
So we did not include everything from our original administrative recommendations. There were a few positions that we did not include with that 1%. But so that would not change. That would still be the same. This again is just a shifting of revenues, but we were able to include quite a few items with the 1%.
I just figured that if we're going to the 2, then we can go back to their original proposal of getting all the things that we needed with the 2%
So,
and not going back to going to 2, but only getting what we would have got at 1.
I think the issue, if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Sugars, is that that initial proposal you gave us also had a significant increase of the fund balance. Is that correct?
Initial submission budget.
Yes.
Yes.
So that might be why the 2% we're talking about now is a different type of 2% because of the fund balance difference. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
so basically the budget that we present at the initial submission from an expenditure standpoint is not changing at all, right? So the preschool's still in there, the additional positions are still in there. That's all going to stay the same. How we pay for that is going to change. Instead of using, $10 million in fund balance, we're going to use $8.1 million in fund balance. And so that difference is going to be made up by increasing the tax levy. So it's not touching expenditures. It's not changing anything. It is just kind of shifting for the reasons that we just talked about, all the, capital reserve money we're using and things of that nature. Just kind of shifting things around.
It just seems, because I don't know. But thank y'all for trying to explain that to me. I guess I just want to make sure that we're getting apples for apples, because I feel like if we aren't doing this and we don't have anything to show for it, like going up in the taxes and it's not going to give us more basic skills, more whatever, all the things they've been begging for, then we're going to look very silly.
So we could, if we added those additional items, we would not be reducing the fund balance as much
It would
as we
keep
are.
it steady.
Right. So that would be the trade-off, that if you added in those positions that weren't included originally, you would be increasing the tax levy and still using more fund balance than.
And you wouldn't be comfortable with that.
I think that, I think it's a very modest increase in fund balance, and I think there could be a little bit of wiggle room there, but I would not want to. I'm very comfortable with where it is.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about it the next meeting, right? So can we just see what it would be with the fund balance versus what is recommended?
Sure.
Mrs. Stern.
Yeah, I just, along those lines, I think for me, the idea of increasing the tax levy to the 2%, which is the state cap, right? We have room to go actually over that, given our, I'm gonna forget what it's called. Banked cap, thank you. It's been a long day, I'm sorry. Then, but if we go to the 2%, which is more than we initially talked about, my support for that would be because it's essentially, I mean, I think of it in the simplest of terms as we're using less of our savings account to cover, all the increase in budget. I wouldn't want to go to the increase our tax levy to, for any other reason. For me, I'm comfortable with the idea of let's not, put our fund balance, our savings account in distress, which is what Mrs. Sugar's concern is. And I mean, she's as our business administrator, I really, that's her expertise. And I think it was a very powerful message that you shared with us when we talked about it. So for me, that's where I'm at. We're already adding quite a few additional needed positions above and beyond what we're required to do to try to bring our staffing back to getting the support with the positions that is going to help us with, in the district as a whole. Specifically, positions that were talked about in C&I, to help to really address some of the achievement concerns we have, the mental health concerns, the special ed support, all their extra positions for all of those things. So I feel good about, I feel like it's kind of a great compromise. We're not going to use up our fund balance, our savings account in a kind of concerning level. And we're also getting more positions. So that's how I look at it. But I mean, I think what's been a little bit challenging about this is, Mrs. Sugars, you said in the initial budget submission presentation, you said we would have benefited from another meeting specifically about this. And I think that's why it's been a little bit more challenging to kind of put all the pieces together, because that didn't happen. We had such a nice lead into budget discussions for months, but that little piece, is good for us good learning for next year, to make sure we have that extra step. And part of the challenge was that the budget numbers came out from the state so late, right? That was delayed this year, which is not first time it's happened, but it makes it harder. So
I think
that's my rationale, if that makes, I just
Yeah,
wanted to
no,
share
that
kind of
makes
where I'm
sense.
looking at it.
I think for me, and I'm not a money person, trust me, ask my husband. I definitely would appreciate I don't want you to go make another presentation, please don't. But I just want a basic one pager of this is the two with the fun thing a little bit less than where you would feel comfortable, or a little bit higher where you'd be comfortable but a little leery of it, which I'm sure you are about everything we do. Because if it's a difference of I don't know, a drop in a bucket to us, not that any pennies a drop in the bucket. See, I told you I'm bad with money. I just wanted to make sense for I keep looking over here at these folks at this table because they're the only point of reference I have for the educators that really have been screaming, we need more people. And the people was the biggest thing that they wanted over anything, was more assets. So I would love to see face value, but bang, 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 one pager, and that's it. That's if Dr. Malosh would like to ask you to do that, because he's in charge of you, not me.
Mr. Greenberg.
Thank you. So I think a very concise answer to your question is we started with a pretty hefty wish list, and the 1% tax levy gets us most of that wish list, including a lot of the examples that you're talking about. What going to 2% gets us is doing that without the significant increase in the fund balance. Would you agree, Mrs. Sugars? Okay. Got it.
I definitely get that. And we're not losing anything from what we already said. Okay, we're okay to lose that. This is just a pencil sharpen of, if it's not that much more and we're not, I don't know, is it a risk worth taking if it gets us 4 more people? Then yeah, for me, just because that's what everybody's been screaming they need. So that's all.
And that, my understanding is that was the difference between the initial preliminary budget proposal at 2% and this one was, rather than adding a couple more positions, we reduced the fund balance. And that's something we went back and forth on quite a bit. With the 1%, we do get most of that list. Well, we'll talk about that another time, what's in the list, but it's most of the list, and getting the fund balance down puts us in better financial shape for next year.
Either way, the fund balance is going to go down by us going to 2. It's going to go down. It's going to go down significantly from where it was when we decided to go to 1, right?
Only
So-
if we use it to reduce the fund balance rather than spending it, which is where we originally started.
I mean, I guess my whole thing is we if it's not too difference between adding them and not adding them, then if we're already going to charge it to other folks anyway, then we could take a little bit of a risk too with our general fund if it's not like $3 bajillion. But I don't know. I'm just advocating for the folks that came here, advocated for what they needed. And we're still at that. It doesn't make logical sense. It makes sense in this room right here, but out in Facebook land, it's not going to make sense because it's going to look like, oh, well, they go into 2, but they're not adding the stuff that they originally proposed.
Well, and
So-
the difference is with everything on the list at 2%, we were at a 22% increase of our fund balance. By doing it this way, we're only at 5%. And that's what the difference is.
Okay.
I just want to add, I also feel like we're neglecting to mention, if I'm not mistaken, that if we apply for the funding stream, that we could be reimbursed for some or all of that $1.8 million,
Correct.
which is why I have a greater issue with taking it out of the tax levy versus the fund balance. Because if the confidence that I have felt from people is true, then that money, not to say it will be wiped out, but like it's kind of a zero base at that point. I know, Mrs. Sugars, I'm not using the correct terminology, but like if you, does that make sense? So like for me, I understand, I totally hear what you're saying. So for me, there's like an element of if the confidence is there that the state, our glorious state, if they're hearing me talk right now, will reimburse us for that, or we will get the grant funding, whether it's all or some. So my personal feeling is that taking it from the fund balance makes more sense, because then in the future, like that tax percent will not go away, right? I know you're like, but that the difference that you mentioned was the difference between going above the 2% because of extenuating circumstances, whether it's like benefits. There's like certain elements that we're allowed to go above 3% without voting, without having the taxpayers vote on it. So what I'm trying to say to you is that we could increase the tax levy to 2% and get those positions that you're talking about, assuming we have the confidence that that money that we take from the fund balance, the 1.8 to fund preschool, would be reimbursed. Does that make sense? Okay.
So last comment, Mrs.
Help myself.
Winters.
So, Ms. Gallagher, that was sort of where I started out with it, with all my crazy math that I do, because by my back of the envelope calculations, we would be getting about 1.8 million back by the per pupil amount times the amount of preschoolers, right? But then with the concerns that I was hearing from members of the community, I thought it was better to go in like with the opposite presumption that we weren't getting it back. Do you know what I mean? I thought that was the safer. I still think we're definitely getting it back. I am 99.9% confident that we are. But even if we didn't, I wanted to make sure that we were safe for this year. And that was, as much as you think we're far apart on this, I don't think we are. Because I really, as much as I believe that this is going to happen based on not emotions, but my 6.5 years of experience in Trenton, working for the legislature, working on state budgets, and my experience before that, I'm working on Abbott preschool. That's really where my confidence is coming from. You know, and as much as I believe that, I really think that, you know, we can do both of these things. We can be fiscally responsible. We can listen to the recommendations of the administration. We can make sure we don't tank our savings account, and we can be bold and take steps looking towards Cherry Hill's future and what's best for our kids. And if circumstances change, then we will change. We will pivot. I'm not somebody who's so stuck in my thinking that I can't be flexible, but I am somebody who thinks that we have been given a charge to do the best we can for the kids of this district. And I think we put together a budget under the guidance of Mr. Mayor that does a lot of those things, that adds the math coaches and the math supervisor that we were talking about forever in the CNI committee, that talks about the future of our preschool students, that talks about being fiscally responsible, that talks about keeping our savings account intact and not raiding it like we're kids with our hands in the cookie jar. And I think we can do all of these things and still be responsible to the taxpayers of Cherry Hill and continue to elevate our kids' education in the way that we all think is the reason why we all ran for office and got elected. We didn't get elected to, you know, we didn't get elected to not do things that we know are the right things for our kids. And that's really where I'm coming from.
No, I agree with you. The thing is, we're all gonna have to take risks. I just feel like if the risk is total made up numbers, Ms. Sugars, if the risk is I'll have $200 in my account or I could have 250, or I can have 300, like I'm gonna take the risk if it means, oh, but I added 4 more people that gets you know, Dr. Mahan out of doing 9,000 jobs, taking off 2 hats at least, that gets, you know, at the building level, gets some pressure off of them with all the things that have been happening. I just don't want to disappoint folks that have been consistently saying that the greatest thing of need and that they desire is more people, because we're going to continue to get more kids, and we can't operate. Y'all know my famous line. We cannot operate like a $8 million organization when we're 200 million, and it's time for us to stop. So that's it. I'm done.
That's an excellent last line. It is time for us to stop. But not to make fun of that. Listen, this is not easy work. And this discussion that we've had, it's a great discussion. There are valid concerns that have been expressed. There are amazing things that we can and will do for our students. But at the end of the day, it's not easy work. Anyone out there who thinks we don't pay attention to these things they're kidding themselves. We know how hard we work. And this is just an hour's worth or so of knocking this around in committee of the whole, which is a little, interesting in itself. But at the end of the day, we have to make our decisions, right? We have to decide for ourselves individually where we're comfortable. What is our risk tolerance, as Mrs. Stern said. But thank you for the discussion. All of it is valuable. All of it is important. And I know that each of us value that as I do. With that said, I'm going to turn the microphone back to Mrs. Stern for the next committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we will move on to human resources, and that is Mrs. Elmore Stratton. I'll turn that right back to you.
Okay, yes. Hold up, my notes disappeared. So HR, I'm gonna share what I can share. Sorry. So the biggest thing, or the biggest highlight for me is we're continuing with our recruitment efforts. We're going to be having another diversity job fair coming in May. Specifically, I think it's May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So we'll be having that. And so I'll be asking all of us board members to be, if you can stop by to support, that's great. But if not, please share, share, share. We've also, or I'm not gonna say we, Miss Adrian's team has invited ESS and Aramark to participate as well in the fair because there's open positions there as well. So we really would like to get a greater turnout for that. And with that, I will also add that, currently there are 73 vacancies, 5 of which are administrator positions. So we have a lot of work to do. And then there's me asking for more people, right? So we have to, we have a lot of recruiting that is needed. So please, everybody share, share, share. The only other update I can share, hold on, is about the teacher transfer period for tenured staff ended on March 31st. And now building principals are currently in the process of contacting candidates for interviews. So that is happening. I know everybody wanted to keep updates on that as well. If I'm able to share anything the next time, I'll share that with you all if I'm allowed to. Am I missing anything, Ms. Adrian? All right, that's it from HR. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions? Oh, nobody cares? Okay, good. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for buying me an extra 30 seconds to take a sip of water when I was about to cough. All right, excuse me. We move on to policy and legislation. And Mrs. Fleischer, if you would lead us in that.
Thank you, Mrs. Stern. So tonight we're speaking about the revision of the 2023-24 calendar. It was previously approved in November 2022. And then we're also going to talk about the 2024-25 that was approved in August of 2022. And then we're going to introduce the calendar of 25-26, which we can't believe it's already there. Now, all the calendars, just as an FYI, we normally have all of our calendars on our district website for the current year and then the following 2 years. So when we're talking about changing or making revisions on any of the calendars for this, for the school year, you can look at the ones on the initial ones we're talking about. For 2022-23, you can find it on the calendar on our website right now. So the one revision, I'm going to start to hand this over to Mrs. Wethington, but we are looking at one revision for next year. Now, everyone's sort of aware that next year is, they say this is the technical term, a wonky like spring break year, right? It is a technical term. I'm sure you all agree. This was brought up originally because first of all, we've made it our decision as a board that it's very important to recognize many of the different holidays of the different, because we're so multicultural in Cherry Hill. That has actually tended for our school calendars to change a little bit. And I'm going to hand it over now to Mrs. Wethington, if that's okay, to talk about, there's one change that she's bringing up for next year, and then we can have any type of discussion.
So January, September through April are going to be mirrors with the current calendar and the proposed calendar. The change would start in April. On April 10th, we would eliminate the teacher in-service day and we would close the district for Eid, to celebrate Eid as we did this past year. And April 24th, we've had some comments from community members and staff about celebrating Passover. We would add the 24th as a day that school was closed to address that concern. May would remain the same. And then in June 14th would be the last day of school as opposed to June 13th. June 17th would then become the in-service day, the teacher flex option day, and schools would be closed for 12-month employees on June 21st in a celebration of Juneteenth. So those are the 23-24 changes.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Wethington. And as we were talking, because Easter and Passover normally coincide with each other in some way, they overlap, but for next year is the reason why we have two sort of longer weekends. And that's what our spring break is, which doesn't make it the easiest for families, we understand, but we want to be able to respect everybody's holidays. So are there any specific questions on this calendar? the 23-24 calendar that Mrs. Wethington just spoke about the differences. Mr. Mayor.
Not so much a question, really. I have a focus group in my house of 3 Cherry Hill West students, and I will just simply say, I promised them that I would raise their concerns. They are simply, as you suspect, because next year's spring break looks a lot different. None of them are particularly pleased. I did, however, tell them exactly why we're doing this, and I stand confident that we're doing the right thing as a board and a district in being able to allow all as many families as possible to celebrate the important moments, dates, and celebratory occasions of their various religions and cultures. So they may not, my focus group is not pleased. I understand that. We will find a way. I think we should also understand there may be a handful more absences during 1 or 2 of those weeks next year, but it's the right, for me, it's the right thing to do. But I promised them that I would raise their concerns, so I've done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I also agree. I think probably what's going to end up happening, it's not an official anything from anywhere from this table. But as a parent also, that the flexibility of our staff is very much appreciated for this crazy spring. And I agree with you with having the respect of everybody's important religious holidays has become something that's important to us as a board. So this is sometimes when you have to walk the walk, this is that doing that right here. Unfortunately, with the way that it has worked. Mrs. Winters.
So I also agree that it's important for everybody to have their holidays, and I fully support that. But I'm just curious, I feel like June 14th is really early for us to be ending the school year. I feel that the school calendar usually goes at least into that 3rd week of June, and most summer camp opportunities aren't open yet. And I am just going to speak now. My focus group is of very small children, including a wild kindergartner, and they were very spring crazy and needed the spring break week off to have a week to reset. So I think is there any possible way that we can imagine it as a both and, a world where people get the religious holidays, but we also respect the fact that everybody sometimes needs a break. And for really little kids, I think less than a week is going to be tough. I think the kids are going to get back on that Thursday and Friday it's a long haul for them to go from winter break all the way to the summer and not have a full break and a full week off. So I just don't know if there's any support at all for possibly taking maybe 2 more days at the end of the year, going to, let's say, June 18th and giving a full week over that Passover week.
Well, I'm just going to ask Mrs. Wethington or Dr. Malash, because I know we're under teacher contracts and also the amount of days that we have to have for school. So if both of you could answer that.
The teacher's contract is 187 days with 182 student contact days, that runs through. The only thing you want to consider as a board too is with the volume of construction that's expected to go on next summer, when you're in the 2nd year of building out the $363 million referendum, the sooner that you can get people into the district to start working, the better off that we'll be. The delay of an extra week on the front end to start that work can have significant impact at the end of August, prior to school opening. So we can, as long as we have students in school 182 days and the certificated staff, they get their 187 days, which includes the 5 in-service days that occur during the year. You can go later, right? Having more days off, as we've shown with the days we've added, can always go. It just depends upon, when we get out. The earlier time, and again, it occurs earlier because a number of the holidays that we typically observe and that schools are closed occur on the weekends, that year, will allow for considerable more work to be done, which is a consideration I think that you have to have.
So right now we're at the limit that we should be, the 182 and the 187, correct?
Yes, this calendar meets the obligations.
Just to confirm that. Okay. Mrs. I'm like, Mrs. I know your name. I'm like, what's your name?
Oh, thank you.
Mrs. Gallagher.
Exactly.
I just want to reiterate what Mrs. Winter said. Like like obviously, like, I don't like we can like yes, I get that there's like extenuating circumstances and yes, the bond work it didn't really cross my mind until you mentioned it, Dr. Malash. But yeah, I mean, I think that the potential of unintended consequences by not providing a full week off might be something to consider. I don't know, because families will want to take time. So, I don't, whatever, that's just something to be considered. But I also do agree that you're right. Sometimes camps are not open for young children that last week. And so it could put parents at a disadvantage. But then on the flip side, I also know some parents who also have young kids who are like, thankfully, I don't have to deal with a week of spring break to deal with young kids, right? I'm a focus group of one. I did not confer with my children before I got here. I don't really care what they have to say, to be quite honest. I truthfully, I guess at the end of the day, I don't necessarily have an opinion on it. Like I kind of, there's a benefit to having kind of 2 nice long weekends to celebrate all the holidays. I can see where people might want a full break. I can also see that maybe the bond. So I guess this is unhelpful, but I was so pro a full week and now I'm like, oh, maybe I'm not, but, I think I could go either way, but yes, you're right. So like, I guess the element too is you're right. Like our kid's going to be kind of like in a weird headspace when they come back for those last 2 days, right? If they even show up at all. I don't know.
Thank you, Mrs. Gallagher. Oh, no problem. No, I know it. It's good to get everyone's thoughts. So I appreciate all the conversation. Mr. Greenbaum.
Thank you. I also want to reiterate what Mrs. Winters said. I think inclusion is important. I also think the fact that the school year is ending significantly earlier. And, we see this when we look at other districts. Most other districts are going an extra week. I think giving families a contiguous full week off is something that families are used to. I agree. I think we're going to have a lot of families out those extra few days in Disney instead of being in school anyway. I understand it has some impact on construction and bond work. But from my perspective, I mean, I'm going to have a little one at home for an extra week as well. If we don't have that contiguous week off, I'm going to be taking a week off at the end of the school year before camp starts. And I think a lot of other families have that as well. If there's the potential to give a contiguous week during that second break, I think that'll benefit a lot of families.
Thank you, Mr. Greenbaum. I think Dr. Rude was first and then Ms. Silmerson.
So I want to continue with Mrs. Gallagher's not being helpful and be even less helpful. I mean, so my high school experience, we had really long vacations. It was awesome. Holidays. We even have Mountain Day where the superintendent would just call Mountain Day and we'd have the day off and we'd hike the mountain and have to check in. I don't know if we can, do that kind of stuff here, but
Find a mess.
we also went to school on Saturdays. So maybe we need a 6-day school week. I don't know. Just saying.
Thank you, Dr. Rude. I'm sure you're going to be very popular now. Thank you for that. And now Ms. Selmer Stratton.
So just to clarify that, the split is only just because of this. It's just this 1 year. It's not every year. So parents
Correct.
or caregivers would have the time to prep and plan for that.
If you look at actually the following 2 years, which are embedded in our agenda and will be up, they are all 1 week
Right.
spring breaks.
Right. I was in this committee before and we talked about this being an issue coming up for this right here. And this was one of the proposals back then that was a suggestion of us breaking it up because we needed to meet the needs. So just putting it out there, like we kind of already knew we were going to do this, y'all. We had to, because I definitely was in P&L and we talked about this. So I Finally, me and Ms. Winters don't agree. Oh my God. I don't agree in adding the days to the school year only because I know camps are, going to be responsive, but here's the other thing. I'll tell you an insider tip on camps. They're going to respond to whatever your calendar is. They look at these calendars when they make their camp weeks. If they're a camp that wants to make some money. So there will be openings, I hate for that parents to be worried about that. Other side of it is I just don't want us to drag out the school year just to drag out the school year. Cause come those last few days, if we add on time to the back end of the year, it's really not adding any educational value, in my opinion, for the students. And no, cause the same thing you're saying about spring break with them being checked out. If you don't think it's going to happen in June, it's going to definitely happen in June. And then I don't know do we have buildings that are all fully air conditioned yet? Like,
After the referendum, you will.
so 5 years from now,
The referendum has to get.
so
passed.
3 to 5 years from now, that'll be a thing. But going a little deeper into the summer, put that into account that now you're going to have kids that have checked out and then also in hot classrooms. So, and that's something that I've seen in all the districts that I've run camp and after school programs in, that becomes the issue. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mrs. Elmer Stratton. I did have one question actually to ask Mrs. I'm sorry to interrupt the information, but I think this is actually important. When we're talking about a possibility, which some people have talked about, extending that school year, when we look at the calendar that's on the district website, it's showing that like the graduation for East and West, it says tentative 20 on June. And I didn't know do we already have any contracts with Leocoris for anything? Is that give
So-
us any problems?
Looking at the calendar as it currently sits on the website, right? Which has the last day of school as June 13th, which is a Thursday. Graduation will occur on June 13th.
Okay.
If you add 2 additional days onto the year, right? So the proposed calendar has us end on the 14th. Graduation would still be on the 13th. We don't do graduation on Fridays in Cherry Hill. If you add 2 days, the 25th and 26th of April, graduation would move to the 18th. It would move to that Tuesday because you wouldn't put it, we would put it at the 182nd day, the latest day that we could schedule it in case of inclement weather. So you would move high school graduation back about 5 days, just in your consideration of impact, of doing that.
And also just looking at additional calendars, because I ran all of them off. Right now, it has a weird thing actually on the district website, because this is where I took it off of. It says tentative 20 graduation East. So I don't know if, because I ran it off today. So I don't know why that says that, but it's going to change probably. Yeah, 23, 24. That's what it says on the website. It says for East and West tentative 20. So that just needs to change in whatever we decide, but I'll move on to more discussion. Mrs. Stern.
So I didn't poll anybody in my house. There was no polling, but I do live with a teacher, and I live with 3 teenagers who all spent the first 3 or 4 days of spring break. The teenagers, the 2 of them sleeping, trying to catch up on sleep because they're beyond exhausted, and we're very happy to have a few days to sleep. So, our focus on the board is the students. We also have to recognize that there are teachers and staff who take care of our students and provide for them, right, every day. And I think typically by April, students and staff all need a refresher. And quite honestly, I guess I'm trying to figure out on June 17th how checked in our staff are going to be for an in-service, which that's not really our domain as a board to think about that kind of stuff, but it does cross my mind, and I just wanted to voice that. And the other thing is, I appreciate the rationale with the bond. And it's a tough call. It really is with the bond construction work. We seem to be having long, our usual stop week, and for the following year as well, is that following week. And, which this this calendar, the week of the 17th through 21st. That is usually when we finish school. So, I am honestly, I am struggling to think about how we have such a short winter break. It's a pretty long stretch for all age students, and for the adults who, what did I say? I'm sorry. Thank you. Spring break. Thank you for correcting me.
Global warming.
Yeah.
They're not that.
Yeah. The April break, I'll call it that. So there's that piece. The other thing, which is a separate issue, is we have a lot of, and it may just be kind of like a coloring thing error that we have, but the committee of the whole, there are way more committee of the whole meetings than we normally have. And I would not want to see that. So I don't know if if that's something that we need to address currently, but there's just too many. I think that just really takes away from our committee experience. So, and from the functioning of our committee. So I wouldn't want to have that many. So anyway, that's a secondary thing, but.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Stern. Mrs. Elmer Stratton.
Ms. Fleischer, from an HR perspective, which I am now an expert, is Adrian's face. I'm totally not. I think for me, the bigger concern for the break is just if the teachers can come back, because if there's a lot of teachers out in those 2 days, I'm sure we might have some issues, but if we give them the time to prep and plan for it now, and with them knowing that it's only a 1-year thing, I think we'll be okay. Because at the end of the day, if your kid wants to be fried or is fried at home, you're going to keep them at home anyway. And you can easily say, I kept my kids home to observe Passover a little bit longer, or to the end of the whatever. I don't know. I'm a bad mom, but I'm just saying that if your kid is not where they should be to go back, you're going to keep them home anyway, right? I think the bigger concern is, do we anticipate a lot of teachers taking off those 2 days and that messing us up, and we don't have enough subs and stuff like that? That would be my only concern. Other than that, as I said before, we already knew this was coming. So I thought we were cool with that 2 years ago. Sorry.
Thank you, Mrs. Elmer Stratton. So I sort of have to throw it back to Mrs. Wethington a little bit. And at this point, where do we land? If there's some people that don't want it to be like that, is this something that needs to be, or Dr. Malash, is it something that needs to be voted on, or do we keep it, or is this just discussion? And
So there's an approved calendar that exists for 23-24. The board has already adopted a calendar.
right.
What Mrs. Wethington is putting forward is a suggested revision to that calendar. And the suggested revision does two things. One, makes the adjustment with Eid for the day to be closed instead of an in-service day. So with the teacher in-service days, contractually, there are 5 in-service days for our certificated staff. Typically, more than 90% of the teachers do 4 of those days, which are 2 before the opening of the school year and 2 sometime during the school year. And then we offer what we refer to as a flex option, which is the equivalent of another day of work. It's 6 additional hours of professional development. Over the course of the last 13 years or so, we've offered this, where we do it after school, and it's in 2-hour sessions. It's embedded during the course of the year. More than 90, in the last few summers, Dr. Mahan and then Dr. Morton, they've offered programs in August as well, prior to the school year, that teachers can do that. So more than 90% of our staff do their extra day that way. There's still a group that, for a variety of reasons, cannot do that, and they come in and do the in-service at the end of the day after the last day of school for students. So it makes that correction that's on there. It also adds the third day in observance of Passover. So it would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week. And then Good Friday is off, and then, the Easter Monday. So there are still 5 days that come up with it. But the only 2 changes, well, there's 3 changes. Eid becomes a day that's closed. So that affects staff. That doesn't affect students. That was already advertised, which is April the 10th. April the 24th becomes a day that's closed, and June the 17th becomes an optional or possible in-service day for staff. So that's what Mrs. Wethington, as we've gone through and looked at it, that's what the suggestion is, for the board to take action. but there is an approved calendar, as Ms. Helmer Stratton said, that's been out there. There's absolutely an approved calendar that's been out and published, and
Okay.
It was
everybody is
approved
aware.
in- This calendar was approved November 2022. That's what it says. The previously approved November 2022 is when this.
Yeah, I believe that was the last time it was approved, and that was a revision.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But okay, so I'm not crazy, but look at all the institutional knowledge that we had to have that discussion that we already discussed this. Just pointing that out.
So I guess when we're going through, this is just a process question. When we're going through, people can either vote yes or no about the revision, correct? I guess that's where we are, but there's no way to make additional revisions. I guess that's
Well,
my question.
so there's a way to make, so this is, again, this is not being put up for a vote tonight, right? So the
Right, it's for
expectation is to be
next-
voted on
correct.
at the action meeting on the
Okay.
25th. If the will of the committee is for Mrs. Weathington to go back and say, we want you to come up with additional, suggestions, or additional
Okay.
models, she can certainly put that together. I would move that into the May cycle though,
Mhm.
and not have a vote on it. But that's, listen, as far as I'm concerned, as long as we finish by June 30th, right?
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
are those optimal days? Do I think that April 25th and 26th will be more beneficial as instructional days than June 17th and 18th? I do. That's my professional opinion as an educator. But that's,
Well, thank you, Dr. Malash. Thank you. So I guess, sure, Mrs. Elmer Stratton.
So maybe it's a Ms. Weathington question. I'm not sure. So with this though, if we go to change it, it has to be done before the June 30th of this year. Is that what you're saying?
So ideally, yes, just for
Okay.
planning purposes for
Okay.
families, right? That's why we do calendars, or historically we've done calendars 2 years out so that families have an idea of what it's going to look like and they can plan out their lives.
Okay.
And they know, and folks through Zone PTA will know that, I would tell them 2 years from now, we're going to have a really long winter break. We're going to look at a calendar tonight that has a really long winter break.
Yeah.
That's in there. We put that out there so that people are aware of what that looks like, and where those things are. The board can, it's a purview of the board. The board can always adjust calendar. Typically, we don't adjust calendars during an academic year unless it's a necessity because of inclement weather.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'll add that in the committee, when we first talked about this, just for everybody to know, is the first thing everybody charged Ms. Weathington with doing is going and speaking to members, people that were of Jewish faith and people that celebrate Easter Christian faith, to make sure that what she put in there was respectful to both religions. So I know she did some extensive conversations with folks to make sure she wasn't discrediting one or the other. So that I just wanted to put that out there.
Yes. I mean, the historical charge as building the calendar has changed over the course of the last literally 7 years to get to where we are, has to be more inclusive of families and members of the community who observe different holidays and different types of holidays. There's never been a charge to make sure that there's a full week spring break. Like this is the first time that discussion, it has come up because when it hasn't been there, but that's never been a charge in building a calendar, and we've had this, I can tell you, we've had discussion with some of the collective bargaining groups who have made suggestions of establish a week and make that the spring break week, regardless of the holidays, right? I mean, that's come up not with the board, but that has come up before with members of collective bargaining, that's there. But that's not been the perspective of what the board has had,
Right. Thank you, everybody. So I think what we need to do right now since we're sort of doing the committee of the whole, but if it's what our committee is charged with, what we're charging as Dr. Malash said, Mrs. Weathington with, for bringing up to our action committee, it would be with our committee members. Is there a need to feel that we want to charge Mrs. Weathington with coming to us with more options, and we need to move it to the May cycle? I'm asking our P&L committee members specifically, and any other people that want to. Dr. Rude,
I'm not on P&L, but I want to say something anyway.
go right ahead.
No, I just feel like I haven't gotten enough people mad at me yet. So Saturday is a great day for school. Nobody's mentioned that the state requires 180 days, but we have 182 scheduled. That's 2 days.
Correct.
I mean, I don't know how administration feels about that or how the board feels about that, but I mean, I'm fine with the calendar as it is, but or as it's here, but if we need that spring break week, I get it. And I mean, 2 days is just 2 days.
Thank you, Dr. Rude. I know Dr. Malash's answer to.
Yeah,
the 100
there's a contractual agreement that exists between the school district and the associations that, there's a compensation package that comes along with 182 days of student contact time, 5 days of in-service time, 187 days total. I mean, that's always a discussion, right? Contracts can always be looked at and that kind of thing, but that is what the contractual obligation is. There's the only time that I'm aware of in the recent history was in spring of 2014 when we had the significant amount of snow, and we made up a whole bunch of days, and then we had 3 or 4 in-service days at the end of the year, and that included just 180 student days that year with the additional in-service time.
Thank you, Dr. Malash. So I'm just bringing it around again. What are we just going to go forward with this, or do we need to charge Mrs. Wethington with bringing us more options at the May meeting? And that, Mr. Greenbaum.
Well, I'll respond as a P&L committee member. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss it. I know this was decided a long time ago. I wasn't a part of the board then. I was happy to have the opportunity to have this discussion now. So I don't know that I feel strongly enough about it that we need to, ask for significant revisions to the calendar, but I thought it was important to have that discussion today. I don't feel that strongly either way, but I'm glad we could talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Greenbaum. Yes, Mrs. Gallagher.
I feel the same way as Mr. Greenbaum. As much as I would love a spring break, and I think everybody does, I don't feel like we need to belabor this. My opinion only.
Any further comments? Mrs. Winters.
I guess on the last one, so I'll be the odd person out. I don't think we need to charge poor Miss Wethington with several iterations of this. And it was discussed before, but I wasn't here either. And neither was Kim, because we're the new kids committee, Ms. Gallagher. So this is what you get when you get the committee of newbies who want to start the discussion again. No institutional knowledge at all. But I'm still personally in favor of adding the 17th and 18th of June and giving a full week off of spring break, but I am only one P&L member. So if there's not that feeling as the consensus of the committee, I'm not going to have a meltdown. So it's just a suggestion. It was an idea. I just feel like spring break is more than holidays. I mean, religious holidays are important and we should observe them and give people the time and the space with their families to do that. But I just think there's value in having a chunk of time off to decompress as a family, no matter what you're celebrating or not celebrating that week. So, but it's just my opinion.
No, and I appreciate everyone's opinion. And like I said, when I had talked to each and every one of you, is bring your creative ideas. Like, it's good to have discussion, to throw things, against the wall and sort of see where they stick and see where we all sort of fall with things. So I guess it's looking like we're just going to go forward with this, with just the revisions that you brought, the revisions that Dr. Malash had already said. And though I think all of us are probably 1 foot in one bucket and 1 foot in the other, to be honest, a lot of times with this. So, but I thank you for all the discussion. And then we move on to our next one, which should hopefully be easier because I thought calendars was going to be the fun one tonight. So it's the 24-25 calendar. And this one, previously, the last time it was approved for revision was August 2022 also. And Mrs. Wethington, can I ask you to let us know what the changes are in the revisions?
You'll all be happy to know there's a full week of spring break in 2025. the 4th through the 18th. One change in March, we have March 14th closed for teacher in service. That's actually an extra day that we don't need. We're going to move that closure to March 31st in celebration of Eid.
Great. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wellington. Are there any questions or comments on the 24-25 calendar change that we just have that one? Mrs. Stern.
Just want to go, I apologize. This is the committee of the whole, which is listed on all the calendars. I mentioned, I don't know why, and jumping back a year, there's so many. In the previous year, usually we have committee of the whole in July, in October, I believe. I think that's typical. And now we have it in April because of the spring breaks, but I think there's multiple ones. I don't know. Is that something that needs to be decided? I'm looking at Mrs. Wellington in terms of approval. Does that need to be decided now? Which days are committee of the whole?
No, it does. That does not. need to be
Okay,
decided
thank
now.
you. Then let me take that off the table and we'll have that.
That's a discussion and
For the
planning
board.
for the board
Okay,
in
perfect.
terms
Thank
of the
you.
organization.
I was
meetings.
hoping you were going to say.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
great.
you so much.
Sorry,
Thank you for
that's all I
bringing
had
that
to
up.
say.
And there can be more discussion about that. That really falls into the number of meetings that occur during the course of the month because of other things that are around it.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mrs. Stern. Are there any further actually discussion on the 24-25 calendar? Or are we good with that? And all right, we're good with that one. So we're moving on. And now we're talking about the introduction of the 2025-26 calendar, which is where Dr. Malash said it's an exceptionally long winter break for this. It goes, I think, like, well, almost 2 weeks for almost, right? It
Almost
goes-
2 weeks.
Yeah, it's almost 2 weeks. So Mrs. Wethington, do you have anything to say about this?
You'll note that teacher in service starts in August, exceptionally long winter break, as Dr. Malash stated. And you'll also notice that we have a full week for spring break.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions about this 25-26 calendar? No? All right. Something exciting to look forward to. Remember, Dr. Malash used to say, plan your vacations now. You've got a long vacation. Yes, I've been there for a long time when we've had this goes in cycles. The last thing I wanted to bring up, and it's not on our agenda, but just as a point of reference, the town hall that we're having at the end of the month on the 24th, Monday, the 24th, has to do about code of conduct, HIB, and bullying. And I know Mrs. Stern's going to mention it too, and possibly Dr. Rude too. And we were talking about making sure, because a lot of the policies, as far as HIB, code of conducts, we've been talking about in this committee for the last year. And we're really trying to work in making sure that there's going to be substantial things that we can talk about to our families, whether they have to do with the infographics about the code of conduct, making things a little bit more accessible and understandable for our families and all of our students. So I just wanted everyone to know that we're really focusing on that. And even though it comes within this month, our P&L committee will be talking and discussing different ways in which we can, express what we need to our parents and hopefully open up more lines of communication. So I think that is about it. And I'm done with P&L. Thank you, Mrs. Stern.
All right, thank you. We're moving on to strategic planning, and that is Dr. Rude.
Oh, good in my hour now. All right. We're on a roll. We've been focusing on three main things in strategic planning. First is the sustainability committee. No, nothing new on that I haven't reported out already. Second thing is fair funding. There's not really anything new there other than I think every time anybody says fair funding, we should really put a plug out to the community to get involved, because although our fair funding committee has done some really good work, they could use a lot more people to make a much bigger voice. One of the reasons that overfunded districts are continuing to get way more money than they should by formula is because people get all riled up in the town and they go and they talk to the state. you can come and scream at us here. It won't do any good about with funding because we're not making the state, we're not deciding the state budget. Go tell our legislators that in the state house that we need more money. That will go much further. If we can get a big enough increase from the state, maybe we don't have to raise property taxes for a year or two, right? Like that's the balance. We don't get enough money from the state. We have to get it from the property taxes. That's all there is to it. So get involved and, recognize that like budgets increase and they have to be paid for. We want a bigger chunk from the state. We have to fight for it, period. That's all I have to say about that. The other thing that we've been talking, we've had one meeting so far where we've brought up communication issues, largely surrounding HIBs. There's been, and bullying and code of conduct. There's been a lot of talk in the community during comment amongst the board about how to best inform the public about different policies, about how to work with families that are impacted by the bad behavior, by children that are being bullied and feel like they need to file a HIB. What happens when that HIB is not founded because it doesn't meet the state definition? Wait a minute, there's a state definition. Yes, like we have to go through a checklist of things in order for something to be called a HIB. So there's a lot of information and misinformation out there. And one of the things that we've been trying to do is like discuss ways to better educate largely the parent community about what these things are. And I know there's been, I talked with Ms. Fleischer this morning, and we talked about how there's been a lot of work on P&L already to update policies, including student code of conduct, to strip out language that's outdated, to make sure that various language within is correct and more inclusive. So we've been doing things to the policies to update them. There are efforts to update the HIB letter. There are updates to, is that correct? The letters, yeah. And there are efforts to make sure stuff is more easily accessible online. I think one of the big suggestions or things that we've discussed I think is really relevant is a lot of the education comes at like beginning of year checklists and going through all the paperwork. And I think if there were ways, we've talked about if there were things that are more point of service is the phrase that came to mind. That's not really, what I mean, but like when there is a HIB, when there is a code of conduct issue, having information about that can immediately go to parents, like general information, so that right then and there, when the emotions are flying, the information is most needed. Like maybe we have resources that are right there available to be shipped out with whatever letters. Also, so there's that communication element. The other thing I briefly talked about with Ms. Fleischer is this elementary school infographic on code of conduct. I think one of the things that has really hit a nerve with people is, and I think it's a little stressful to me, like the idea of retribution, that like when somebody is mean to your kid and the offender is punished through code of conduct, as a parent of the victim, you don't really get to see what the punishment is, nor should you really, like, because it's not your judgment to decide if it's the right punishment or not. That's up to the school district. But parents want to know that something was done. And I think having the idea of those infographics and different things allow for there to be a more like formalized like way of knowing this is how the district responds to different types of code of conduct issues. we're never going to be able to say, this is how we punish the offender in your case. We can't do that. The student records are protected by FERPA laws. I believe that's correct. Okay. So we can't do that and we shouldn't do that. But what we can do possibly is provide more direct information about, what are the ways that code of conduct is addressed. And it's important. So coming up soon is what's the date on the town hall? So there's going to be a town hall on the 24th to discuss issues around HIB, around bullying and student code of conduct. I think anybody that really is passionate about this issue or has concerns should really go to that town hall and address your concerns. It's a place for you to ask real questions and get whatever answers we can provide. But so that's just that I think I've said enough to summarize what we've been talking about in the strategic planning committee, the ideas that are percolating. Obviously, strategic planning has just been a place for us to let ideas percolate. It's not policy, it's not new decisions being made, but we have the ability here to bring this stuff up in this forum. And people that are sitting on CNI and P&L committees can say, like, is there anything we can do about these things in our committees? And I know there's already a lot of stuff going on. So for the community at large, know that we are tuned into this topic and trying to make positive change. So that's all I have to say for strategic planning. So if there's any questions, comments from committee members or anybody else, let me start with Mr. Mayor, and then we'll go to Ms. Elmore Stratton.
So that's great. Great summary. Captured at least what I've been getting and participating in our meetings. I think it's more, we need to do better in communicating. We need to do better in educating. The concept in trying to reach families at a time when they are more emotionally engaged is important. And I think we've talked about that. I think it's also important, though, to be able to provide information during times when the emotions aren't quite there, right? Because we all know that, and none of us, I think, we don't process information as carefully and as well when we are in a state when we are emotionally charged, regardless of what that information is. So we have had those discussions. I look forward to more of those with regard to education and a better explanation of what what HIBs are, what HIBs aren't, and the simple fact that where there is a finding or where an HIB is unfounded, that doesn't mean that there is a determination that nothing happened at all. In fact, this is what I think we have talked about, and we look forward to having a more robust discussion during the town hall, is that just because a statutory HIB is unfounded because of the absence of one or more of the statutorily required elements, doesn't mean it didn't happen. Doesn't mean that the administration, the school, is not addressing the behavior in another way, and in a way that is maybe exactly the same as it would had it been a founded HIB. And Dr. Rood, you're also correct when you say that in many instances, we can't provide the kind of detailed information to parents with respect to, well, what happened? What did the aggressor actually, what was their discipline? Because that is protected information. So I look forward to those discussions. I look forward to the town hall. It's important. And you've done a really good job of shepherding these discussions throughout. And I think we should always be creative in trying to identify other opportunities to get this information out, whether that be written pamphlets, perhaps, that can be placed out on the chairs at meetings. But it was a great summary. I'm looking forward to all of that. that's really no questions. I just want to kind of provide some additional support and context for the discussions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Elmore Stratton.
So you set me up, Dr. Rude, the last time to get this. I commented and then I became America's most hated board member. So I just want to be clear that I take HIBs very seriously. I think in that town hall, what I would love to see is for the speaker to really say what is our role as board members in this, because I think this is just one of the many topics that people assume we have so much purview over, and we don't. For this, just like with everything else, the first line of defense is either the teacher or that building principal. By the time it gets to us, we don't even see names. We don't, we're going by strictly off of the law. So I just would love to see the town hall really explained what our role is, what our capacity is, what we do get to comment on. And then I would love for them to talk about the ramifications of what happens if something is founded, because there's also the stigma of, and I shared this before in exec session, especially with some of our students of color, there's a stigma of, oh, this is going to follow my child from class to class, building to building, grade to grade. And so I would love for the town hall to really spell that out, as well as in, something founded doesn't stick with your kid forever. But I just want to be clear, I take HIB very seriously. At the time that we were speaking about it, I didn't want it to be taken and foreshadowed and us once again making assumptions based off of community chatter about a very private family tragedy that was none of our business. I think just like with the lunchtime, when everybody jumped to be the lunch advocates for all of the people of color that we were just starving to death. That's one of the things where people took their own assumptions. We never said what were the financial situations of those people or what was the color of those people, the ethnicities, the race, none of that, but people made assumptions. And at the time that we were talking about it, people were making assumptions that a certain tragedy was due to our negligence. I didn't like that assumption, and I didn't want that to be the topic that overshadowed the fact that HIBs in general was something we wanted to talk about anyway. We were already wanting to change some things and have requested some changes, and we've seen them in our own exec sessions. I just did not like the connotation that is the overarching theme of our district, which is why I said that's not everybody's story. So just wanted that to be very clear. The other side of me saying that is because there are spaces in our district where what is happening at the building level in terms of culture and climate and respect is working. So at the same time as we are looking at parents, or not parents, caregivers understanding what happens with HIB versus what happens with code of conduct, I'd also like to see us maybe have more of the the learning communities that happen, PLCs, TLCs, CLCs. Maybe there be more conversation about some of the best practices in these buildings that are not having high numbers of allegations of HIB. And then my final thought for just the town hall is really to just, I would love for everybody to understand that the view of bullying versus how we all know it, and I say we all as in the world and what we've been raised and lived and learned, is not the same thing as what's on that paper for us to follow. And that's where the conflict is. We're not cold-hearted, we do, that kind of thing. So I would love for all of that to be clarified in the town hall. And I like the strides that we're making with the HIBs in general, in terms of us questioning more things, questioning what's going on, and at the same time acknowledging that the folks at the building level are also the experts, and what they propose to us it wasn't just on a whim. It's something that they really do take serious. There's investigations behind it. There's all these other steps. It's not just a yes or no. So I just wanted to just be clear in that aspect.
Thank you for those insights. Ms. Stern.
Thank you. So yeah, I think just because we haven't, as a board, had a full board have the discussion about the town hall, but I think all those pieces are critically important. And I think, I think we definitely know that, there's a kind of what we call, what I consider like the common definition of bullying, which is I would say the vast majority of conversation going on about bullying is really that kind of common definition versus the statutory regulations, which is what Dr. Rood and Mr. Mayor referred to. So, absolutely. And I think it's kind of three pieces. It's what is HIB and all the pieces you talked about. It's, what is code of conduct, in our district? How does that address, and how is that used to address the behaviors that many of us think of as bullying, but don't meet the criteria for the statutory regulation of HIB. So I also wanted to just mention in terms of communication, which is, the piece, there is, and this is, I think, really useful for the community, which I think the district puts a lot of pieces together to be useful to parents. I want to see how, I'm hoping parents engage with those. Sometimes there are pieces that are underutilized, so we have to relook at, is there a different way to present them? Mrs. Gallagher and I had that conversation in our last board meeting when we went to a really fantastic presentation on use of drugs amongst students and being aware of that. And that had an extremely low parent attendance, which was unfortunate. So, we have to kind of look at, are there different ways to reach parents? But there's the parent university is coming. It's next week. It's April 19th, next Wednesday. It's at 5:30 and it'll be in this building. And it's for parents, guardians, any Cherry Hill community members. And there will be, and I'm reading from the flyer, there will be topics addressed on adolescent behavior, cyber and social media bullying, keeping your kids safe. And that's the common term bullying, not the statutory HIB regulation necessarily. I guess I could cover that too, but guiding your child to behavioral success, LGBTQ plus, Naviance, college readiness, stress and anxiety, building resilience. So there's all these great topics and presenters from our community that will be here. This is a great resource, and it's it's another way that, the district is putting a lot of effort into reaching families, reaching parents, to support kids. We know our kids are struggling. We see the significant struggles that affect behavior that relate to, kids being in person so much at, having had that, a lot of hybrid learning coming into full person learning, kids using technology. The vast majority of parents today are not digital natives. We have had to learn, and our kids are all digital natives, and there's a whole lot that goes on with that. So hopefully, giving this plug for Parent University, parents will engage with this and come and attend. It's being given at night, so it's accessible, hopefully for a lot of parents who are after traditional work hours. So, I think these are the kinds of things that will continue that the district is doing. There are things that, like town halls, that we are doing, and we're continuing to go to PTA meetings. I'm very excited. We have another one this week. Hooray. So we continue to beg PTAs, please invite us. We've been invited to a couple more PTA meetings. I'm hoping that'll continue. So it's a way to improve the communication and have a more personalized setting rather than board meetings, which is not really a direct way to communicate with us, except for us to listen to public comment. So kind of a long-winded piece, but thank you.
Just want to make sure anybody else wanted to make any comments. No. All right, let's move it on. Back to you, Ms. Stern.
Okay, thank you. We now go on to, we go on to our action agenda. And my cheat sheet, I'm not using my cheat sheet. And so I'll ask Mrs. Winters to please move the curriculum and instruction agenda.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends and I move the following: 17.1, approval of attendance at conference and workshops for the 22-23 school year. 17.2, approval of comprehensive equity plan statement of assurance for the academic years 23-24. 17.3, resolution approving a professional services agreement between the Cherry Hill Board of Education and Effective School Solutions to provide mental health services. 17.4, approval of professional development proposal, math teacher and administrator training. Do I have a second? Ms. Fleischer, are there any questions? Seeing none, Ms. Sugars, can you open for a vote, please?
Yep, the online voting is open. You may cast your votes. If you have any abstentions or exceptions, let me know. I'll mark it manually.
Ms. Sugars, I'm yes to all, but my internet timed out, so I have to get logged back in.
You have unanimous yes vote.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, could you please move the business and facilities agenda?
Indeed, I can. Superintendent recommends that I move the following 18.1 approval of bill lists, 18.2 resolution authorizing the use of contracts with approved Sourcewell National Cooperative for vendors to provide goods and services, 18.3 resolution authorizing submission and acceptance of the climate grant, 18.4 resolution of the award of bids, and 18.5 acceptance of donations. Do I have a second? Dr. Rude, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars, would you open the voting?
The online voting is open. You may cast your votes.
Mr. Sugar, I have to abstain 18.1. Everything else is yes.
Okay, Mrs. Elmore Stratton, could you please move the HR agenda?
Sure can. The superintendent recommends and I move the following: 19.1, termination of employment certificated; 19.2, termination of employment non-certificated; 19.3, appointment certificated; 19.4, appointments non-certificated; 19.5, other compensation certificated; 19.6, affiliation agreement. And that's it. So do I have a second? Dr. Rude, and any questions? Okay, thank you. Ms. Sugars?
Online voting is open. You may cast your votes. And we have a unanimous yes vote.
Okay, we now, Mrs. Fleischer, could you please move the policy and legislation agenda?
Thank you. Superintendent recommends and I move the following: 20.1, the approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying, investigation decisions. Do I have a second? Mr. Greenbaum. Any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars, can you open the voting?
Yep, you may cast your votes.
Sugars, I need to abstain because I was not present for the discussion.
You can, because it's a one item, just, yeah, you can just do abstain. Okay, other than the exception noted, we have 2 abstentions. The rest are all yes votes.
Okay, great. And strategic planning? I'm sorry, it looks like we got nothing to vote for again, so. You turn into a pumpkin at 10 o'clock. Okay, so that moves us along. Sorry, Dr. Reed. So that moves us along to new business. Is there any new business? Okay. Oh, Mrs. Tong.
This is something I'm not sure new or old, but at the high school east, the entrance, this is our question, I think. The entrance coming out from the main building, I think used to be going in and out, but now it's only changing going in. Like there's a two entrance coming
Are you talking about the parking lot
parking
and the
lot.
driveway? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, is there any way we could do something about it? Because it's finding very odd to go around the whole backyard and then coming out to the front and then just curiosity. I mean, is there anything we can do about it? Well, maybe expand the land. And I know the buses comes during the school hours. I could understand that, but during the days that the bus is not there, is a big circle going around the back. And then sometimes the roads are very narrow. Some student can go in the wrong direction. So I'm just curious if we could do something about it.
I'm gonna send that over to Dr. Malash to explain. The change was made about a year ago, right?
Yeah, we can certainly have follow-up discussion with Mr. Saporito and Dr. Perry and Dr. Morton. That was instituted as a safety concern. Instead of traffic coming out onto Crescent Road, multiple different places at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, to funnel and kind of quiet the traffic all going in the same direction. So it all has to exit at the light where it's much more controlled. There are a lot of people coming on and off that campus at the same time, and while it's a little bit slower, we expect it to be a little bit safer, but I can certainly bring it up with them and see how it's gone and if they've gotten any additional feedback.
Thank you.
It sounds like it's a matter of safety versus convenience is really, yeah. It sounds like that's the rationale.
Right, but there's still a lot of people doesn't know. I've seen, observed people still going out that way. And I say, wait a minute, I have to go now. So going to people sneak out the other way. I'm just trying to see if we could expand the lane a little bit wider, maybe, because it does go in a big circle going to the back. And in the back, like I said, the roads are very narrow.
I think you're talking about another bond referendum, Mrs. Tong. For
Not trying
paving.
to.
I don't know.
Well, we're doing the money we're putting in for the construction, all that, and do the road pavement, you might as well do it right, I think. All right, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And now we move on to any other new business? Okay. Any old business? No? No? Okay. All right, we will move on to our second public comment period. This is the second public comment section during which you may comment on any non-agenda item topics, non-action agenda item topics. If you would like to speak now, please clearly state your name and municipality. We will alternate between speakers here in the room and those who are online. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer on the screen will indicate the amount of time you have remaining. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the community to comment on matters relevant to the operations of Cherry Hill Public School District or within the authority of the Cherry Hill Board of Education. The board welcomes diverse opinions on relevant matters. Under established federal law governing reasonable restrictions on speech in public forums, statements which demean individual community members or groups, or which are irrelevant to the operations of the school district or repetitive, will not be permitted. Community members who would like to present information not relevant to the school district are always welcome to communicate directly to the district superintendent, board president, and all board members via email or other alternative means. My mouth is very dry. There's a lot to say. Okay. We will start in the room. If you could state your name and municipality, please.
Rick Short, Cherry Hill. My first question for Madam President Stern. I see under this regular ROD grant, it's estimated at $5 million. One of the bullet points, and we don't know the exact cost of it, says reinstate funding head in for emergency notification system, public address bell systems. I think we need a definition of this because I know at Cherry Hill East, they earmarked $686,000 for what was called replace PA system, clock system, and technology. So how much is this other $5 million item. I think that's important to know for the community. First up. And then the most important part is, again, I'm back here up advocating for $150,000 out of $500 million, which I just can't fathom how you can't find $150,000. And you all know what I'm advocating for because I can't really mention it. It's quite absurd that you're not taking these extra security measures. I mean, do we forget that on June 15th, 2011, we had a gunman end up at Kilmer Elementary School for 25 minutes with the Cherry Hill Police? Did we forget that on October 2nd, 2021, 37 yards away from school property, we had 8 shots fired? And then another surprise, and this is just a bizarre thing, and this is one of those weird things that happen you would never think would happen in Cherry Hill. On August 7th, 2017, we find out we had some neo-Nazi record master selling mice trap. I mean, who would ever think we have a neo-Nazi? I don't know any neo-Nazis. I've never met one in my life. I mean, these are the things you should worry about. Just random crazy things happening, but you can't spend $150,000 on protecting. You're not thinking ahead and buying security for doors. You're not thinking ahead a year. It's going to take a year just to build the doors. You know, I advocated with Lori Aladef on 4/24/2018. She says, if you have the money, spend it. She came back again on January 22nd, 20, saying the same thing. If you have the money. Now my other new friend, Andrew Pollock, on April 1st, 2023, I sent you a letter. I mean, guys, it's $150,000 out of
Thank you,
$500 million.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we move on to Ann Einhorn, who is on the line.
Hi, Ann Einhorn, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I'd like to thank you, Mrs. Gallagher. Your concerns about the cost of all-day pre-K are valid and concerning to members of the public as well. Very concerning. Mrs. Elmer Stratton, please keep pushing. What do the teachers need? Let's start with more basic skills across the board. Let's concentrate on the last COVID missing learning years, social, emotional, and educational. We need more math coaches. That's $650,000 for next year's budget for pre-K could have gone a long way to addressing what the teachers need. But tonight, it seems the majority of the sitting board would rather have another hour-long discussion on pre-K for 120 students at $695,000 a classroom, rather than addressing the true needs of our teachers. It's sad. It's really sad. And I would really like to see the plan for pre-K. I'd really like to know how you're choosing those children that will be going. And let's hope the state comes through. Thank you.
Okay, we go back to the room. Okay, if you could state your name and municipality for the record,
Steve
not because
Redfern.
we don't know who you are.
Right. Steve Redfern, Cherry Hill. So a couple things. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for bringing up the topic of the 2% and the board reconsidering. I think it's the wise thing to do. Second, Mrs. Fleischer, in terms of the calendars, thank you for your work. Might be a great topic for LMC tomorrow to discuss. My focus group at home, Mr. Mayor, 3 aren't real fond of the spring break, but I have to remind them about the June 13th date, which then gets them very excited. And my other 1,000 focus group, I have to say the same thing too. Spring break's not a great thing, but I remind them of June 13th. Mr. Rude, 180, I could probably sell. Saturdays, I don't know if that's going to quite work right now. And lastly, Mrs. Stratton, thank you. I do believe there are things that are still on the table that the board has to think about. One of the things, and Mrs. Einhorn just stated, and I know when I visited town halls with Dr. Malash, I almost said, Mr. I apologize, basic skills teachers were brought up in a few of the elementary schools. So I do think we need to, go and look at those items again. As far as preschool goes, it's a big task. I also would probably recommend that you talk to some of the districts that maybe just started it, because there have been some pitfalls in terms of getting it rolling. And coming from a household where there's a kindergarten teacher, I'm going to say that we have full day K, and I don't believe, except for this year, that we've had it up and running normally until this year. So it might be time to kind of sit back and look at that full day kindergarten program and see exactly where we're at, where we're going, because we haven't had a real legitimate first year of it until this year, before we start to talk about full day preschool. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. I know these decisions are not easy.
Okay. And now we go to the line, and the initials are NB. If you could kindly say your full name and your municipality, please.
Hi, Carolina Bevid, Cherry Hill. I just wanted to comment on the discussions that were being had. First, I want to thank the board members who participated in the robust discussion about pre-K. It is helpful for the community to hear those questions being asked and answered. I will say it's a hard pill to swallow to hear the board talking about raising taxes beyond what they were already raising them to cover this initial pre-K cost that's going to get paid back, et cetera, et cetera. It does get complicated, but between the bond and now this, it's difficult to, I'm sure a lot of parents listening, or even if they're not listening, they have students who are still suffering from learning loss from COVID closures. I know I have a student who I'm setting up tutors for him for the summer. And yet here my taxes are being raised again, and I'm not really seeing where current student needs are being addressed in schools during the school year. I know his teacher is doing a lot of work, but he needs more. So the ESSER funds that we got, like, where did they go? Where is all this money going? It kind of just feels like we're pouring money into a black hole. The test scores we've seen are not impressive that have been presented at these meetings. Like, where's our money going, and why are we paying more and more and more to build new programs when we have struggling students now whose needs aren't being addressed? Thank you.
Okay, let me go back to the room. If there's anyone. Okay, and go back to the line. I don't see any more hands held, so we will close public comment. And now we move on to, superintendent's comments.
Thank you, Ms. Stern. Just a couple of follow-up items from the public comment. There's a question about the money for the ROD grant and what was allocated in the referendum. So when the referendum was developed originally, we had allocated $6 per square foot for technology and for communications. That was cut in half to $3 per square foot in order to get it within the bonding capacity. This reinstates that additional $3 to continue to do additional work and to put the additional cost in towards those items. Mr. Short, you have emailed us. You brought up a specific thing that you want the $150,000 spent on. As we've talked about in the past with security and security items with the building, we are never going to publicize all the very specific security things that have been done or security enhancements that have been done to our facilities. We would not advertise everything that has already been done or where it's been done, because we don't think that information needs to be out there. If you'd like to have an overall discussion about security and what's going on within our schools, as I've done for a considerable amount of time, I invite you to contact Mrs. Cohen, and we can always sit down to have a discussion. I think that's it, Ms. Stern.
Okay, great. And at this point in the meeting, we have concluded our entire meeting. So I would ask if we can take a vote to have adjourned the meeting, make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second? Mrs. Fleischer? And all in favor? Aye. Okay, meeting is adjourned. Motion carries.